Turn it on and rip the knob off.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Wrestling Memory Grenade. Steve, it feels like forever, but here we are in 2021. We made it through 2020, and once again, episode 22 of the Grenade, the Double Deuce episode. Double Deuce, that was the Barn Roadhouse, and I guess I would be your host, Ray James Dalton Russell. I guess you would be my co-host. That would make you Steve Wade Garrett Eckstat, maybe. I think I want to be Wade Garrett. I think Sam Elliott had it a lot better, and other than dying, I think Sam Elliott had it better in the movie. He just kind of chilled out and got drunk. It's my kind of guy.
Yeah, who wouldn't want to be Sam Elliott? Let's be honest.
Yeah, well, I'm all about Sam Elliott in the movie until he dies. So, like, if we can rewrite the movie to where he doesn't die, I would rather be Wade Garrett myself.
Well, yeah. I think I would always rather be a Sam Elliott than anybody else. But you can't go wrong with Patrick Swayze either, man.
Oh no, I can't take anything away from my boy Swayze there either. So we're at episode 22. That's the Double Deuce. That puts us at Roadhouse, and how appropriate, because just like the movie Roadhouse, this episode of The Grenade also features Terry Funk trying to murder someone. No. And since we're doing 3 weeks of NWA TV along with all kinds of notes and news and everything in between, this is a tribute to Tracy Smothers. I'm going to dub this episode the Ultra Mega Mass Homicide Edition, because we've got scoops for days on this show, Steve.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into it, man. This is it's going to be a busy week of everything. You know, like you said, 3 weeks worth of TV, all the news notes, some Clash information. I mean, just everything you could want from 1989 NWA is going to be in this episode.
On behalf of the Wrestling Memory Grenade and the WrestleCopia brand, we are proud to announce our very own Patreon account. We encourage everyone to stop on over to patreon.com/WrestleCopia and check out an amazing 14 tiers. And depending on your budget, we have everything from as little as a $1 tier to as much as a $100 tier. Get you all sorts of exciting offers. It really all depends on what offer you value the most. You can do anything from join Steve and I right here as co-hosts for an episode of The Grenade, all the way down to unedited versions of the show, early access to upcoming episodes, beat everyone else to the punch, see what we're saying before everyone else gets to hear it, plus my insanely detailed show notes, which I value ever so dearly. You can even pick the flick. And what that means is, if you subscribe to one of our You Pick the Flick tiers, you'll tell us, me and Steve, what show it is you want us to review. It can be a watch-along on the WWE Network, YouTube, Daily Motion. It can even be a live review of a rare show from my personal archive vault of videos at home. No promotion, no territory, no era is off limits. You can request anything from your favorite WrestleMania to an episode of 1982 World Class to the 60-minute classic between Jack Briscoe and Dory Funk Jr. from 1970's All Japan. Hell, if you want to put us through the misery, we'll even pull a Mystery Science Theater over here and watch Hell Comes to Frogtown starring Roddy Piper. You tell us what you want us to review, and we'll do our own little watch-along and do our best to entertain you guys and give you guys insight in the process. And it doesn't end there. There's a $5 tier, the all-access tier. Not only do you gain access to everything on every lower tier, but you'll also have complete access to our entire full library of random show reviews and watch-alongs we've done and continue to do as a side project. We review everything from the Flair Steamboat 2 out of 3 fall match from Clash 6, all the way down to the Halloween 1985 edition of Saturday Night's Main Event. It's a proverbial hodgepodge of randomness, as you never know what we'll review next. And it's exclusive to the all-access tier or any of the higher tiers over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. Check it out now. That address again is patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That's Wrestle, C-O-P-I-A. And I guess we're going to get right into the notes and news. Actually, before we do that, let's talk just real quickly. I know I don't have to twist your arm to talk about your boy, the total package Lex Luger.
You don't. You definitely do not.
So for those who haven't been following us on Twitter, do so at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. I've been posting videos like crazy of the NWA stuff we've been going through, as well as some of the commercials, some of the fun commercials for roller games and American Gladiators, things like that. You can also go follow us or subscribe to us on YouTube. I've been posting a lot of videos over on our Wrestling Memory Grenade YouTube channel as well. One of those videos, Joined in Progress, is a match that we discussed last week on the Grenade, pitting your boy Lex Luger against Ranger Ross. And during the closing moments of the match, Lex Luger ascends to the middle rope, and I think he looks like he's going for an elbow or a forearm or something of that nature. But he slips and falls right on the schnoz.
Ow! Right in the schnoz!
And boy, does he ever land.
Ow! Right in the schnoz!
And right in the schnoz. Shout out to Home Alone 2, by the way, there for anybody who recognized that line. So Luger lands right on his face. Of course, he quickly recovers, clotheslines Ranger Ross, gets the win, but I couldn't help but post the video. And the first thing you said to me is, Lex isn't really that active on Twitter. And that's fine. I should mention I did tag Lexi in the video when I posted it. And I really didn't expect anything in return. But what we got was a response. I couldn't believe it. It wasn't a whole lot, but it was something. And I'm grateful for that. Got to thank the Total Package Lex Luger, who responded with a smiley face of sorts and a fist. And I said to you, Steve, I said, I wasn't sure if he was fist bumping us or if he was trying to punch us. I'm not really sure, but it was really cool to see Lex respond with a smile. Took it lightheartedly. It wasn't meant to be any malice on our side. You love Lex Luger. I was a giant fan during that era as well. It was just, it was a funny spot. We put it out there. I showed it to Lex, and really my entire intention, if he were to respond, was to see how he responded, just to see how humble he truly is now. And he's laughing at himself over a mistake he made, 30 years ago. He was having a good time looking at the video as well. So thank you, Lex Luger, for tweeting us back, and we really appreciate you checking out the video, and we appreciate everyone else too who's downloaded, subscribed to the show, and responded to the video as well.
I think if you would have done this about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, or he probably would have came after you. But no, definitely a new Lex Luger. He doesn't take himself seriously anymore, it seems like. And after reading his book, I even have more found respect for the guy. What a story. Just incredible how he lived. And it's amazing, to be honest with you, that he's still here. Every day, the vodka and pills combo that he did, it's just amazing. If you haven't read his book, I would definitely recommend it. I can't recommend it enough. It's game-changing, to be honest with you.
That's one book I do own, and I have not read yet. I have a stack of books I haven't read. I'm big time into the territory books. I try to get through those first, and then I always put off some of the, the newer, I call them newer. Obviously, Luger started in the mid-'80s, but the newer type talent. So you see where my level of things go, but I just haven't gotten to that one yet. I've been meaning to. You just mentioned just in passing how honest he was, and it didn't make him look good. He didn't put himself in a good light either, even growing up as a child. So, or a high school and things.
To be honest with you, the majority of his story is him talking about how terrible he was or how bad he was. It was mainly stories of him just doing things that you shouldn't be doing, stealing, the stuff he did to get kicked off the football team at Miami,
right?
What he did at Penn State. So, I mean, he really didn't go into detail on the positives in his life until the end, like after he went through his experience and whatnot. It was so good. I read the whole book in one day. I couldn't put it down. I stayed up till like 2 a.m. and I finished it off because I couldn't put it down. And very, very good. Like I said, I couldn't recommend it enough. Just a tremendous book. Super
humbling, and probably one of the very few that are truly, honestly turned over a new leaf in their life. I do believe Lex Luger, out of the 100, 2,000, whatever it is, guys that have claimed to have found God and made peace with themselves, I believe Lex Luger is one of the very few that truly have, and he proves it day after day, I think. So kudos to you, Mr. Lex Luger out there. Hopefully we hear from you again. It would certainly be an honor, and we'll get going with the show there, but I just had to put that out there. Also, you know what, real quick, I also made a post just for the hell of it. I was bored. I was posting all these videos, and I saw that picture of JR staring at Robin Green the first time he sees her all made up looking like woman with his eyes bugging out, and I said, I'm going to post this on Twitter. I just love this picture. It's great. Standing at that hotel room door. And then as I went to post it, I said, you know what? I need some context to this picture. So I posted the JR eyeballs on the left of the tweet, and I posted a picture of what he was looking at, Robin Green, on the right. So you got a visual of both sides at the same time. And I posted that, and it didn't take long Sure enough, Jim Ross responds just with he liked it. I mean, that's all he did. He didn't really respond, but he saw it and he gave us a thumbs up. So I'll take that approval any day. And I'm happy. I'm sure that brightened Jim Ross. Not that Jim Ross needs me to brighten his day, but I'm sure that was just another chuckle he got throughout the course of the day. Old memories.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Jim Ross is talking about somebody being active on Twitter. That's one of them. That's cool, Jim Ross. He seems to be a fan of the grenade, at least on Twitter.
Yeah, social media, as much as it's how bad it is for you, at the same time, it really did change a lot of things. I mean, growing up, wrestlers were unattainable. And, people like Cornette argue that they shouldn't be attainable. That's what made them so special, which I get that point. And I couldn't agree more when the guys are out here posting their personal lives and going out and partying and, hey, we're at the beach today. And I don't know that, maybe I'm old school. Maybe I don't see a need for all of that when you're working a character on TV. However, at the same time, it's very cool that they can interact, at least the guys that have retired and moved on and things, or even in Jim Ross's case, they can interact with their followers who followed them for so long on TV. So very cool stuff there.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll get moving on because we've got so much to get into. And the very first piece of news in the NWA, and I figured I'd get this out of the way first because it's more funny than anything else. It's Kangaroo's Athletic Wear, who, Steve, you may better know as Ruse, the shoes. They've started taking out full-page ads in the newspapers with NWA stars rocking their gear. So it won't be long before we get those commercials from TV with Rick Steiner and others wearing those shoes for your feet, pockets for your stuff.
I can't wait.
They're Ruse shoes. They have to have pouches, Steve. They have to.
Absolutely. I love the ads and the commercials for them. There's some awesome promo shots with guys that, like the Road Warriors and Rick Steiner and Ric Flair and Sting, all those guys together that you normally wouldn't see together, but they're thrown together for these ads. And man, there are some awesome looking pictures out there. Those guys together rocking the Ruse and the Zubas, which is a Road Warriors thing. Actually, they kind of started that whole gimmick. But Ruse is cool with me, man.
So real quick, we're going to do a quick review of the Clash of the Champions 8, which just took place on the 12th, I believe it was, of September, as we're moving into the weekend following. Now, we did do a full watch-along of the Clash of the Champions 8 Fall Brawl. You guys go back to episode 19 of The Grenade and listen to the entire watch-along of the show. Very, very good Clash of the Champions. Well booked by the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And Clash 8 drew a 4.7 rating, which means 2.4 million homes, which means 5.3 million viewers. Eyes on the set, 5.3 million. Vince would kill for that today. And it's the second highest rating in Clash of the Champions history, only behind the original Clash of the Champions with Flair and Sting back in '88. Meltzer notes that
cool.
No, it's more than cool. I mean, things are maybe turning around, but was this by, coincidence? Was it accidental that this many people just happened to tune in? Was nothing on that night? No, things were on that night. In fact, Meltzer notes he was very shocked by the rating because, first of all, it also marked the same night of the season 2 premiere of Roseanne, which was the number one watched show. It beat out Cosby, the Cosby Show, the number one watched show, and there in the late 80s and going into the 90s. It was the season 2, episode 1. I believe that's where Becky cuts the cheese at school. I think the episode's called Inherit the Wind. I know my early seasons of Roseanne, Steve, very well.
No, I love me some Roseanne. It's a great show, very entertaining. Yeah. John Goodman's one of my favorites. So
great writing, I thought.
I thought so too. It felt real and relatable.
Yeah,
more than some of those other
I
shows.
agree with you. It's very timely too. Like I can watch it today, and still things have changed around here in the world. Yes, but you can still. I can relate back to that era and my home. My home wasn't like Roseanne's home, but it was more relatable than a lot of TV shows that were on TV at the time.
Yeah.
Also that night, not only was Roseanne back on the air, but it also marked the debut of Roller Games. Shout out to Dave Meltzer out there, DeMeltz, who pondered if the debut of Roller Games was going to hurt the Clash of the Champions rating, because we all know Dave, he loved him some roller derby back in the old school days here. So that didn't happen, Dave. 13 episodes in and out. But he thought it might do something here. It didn't really do a whole lot, I guess. Heavy production, like we said before, pro wrestling on roller skates, but didn't cut the mustard here. As Clash does well. In fact, it got a 90% thumbs up in the Observer, and I concur. It was a very well booked show.
I thought so too. I mean, like you mentioned during I don't know if it was a watch along or last week's show where it gets lost in the shuffle because the uniqueness of 7 and then the I Quit match at 9. Ace just kind of in the middle and it's stuck. It's kind of just there and people forget about it. But this is one of the better Clash of the Champions all around, beginning to end.
Yeah, wrestling wise, I have to agree. It's very it's crazy that it's overlooked. It really is. As the show gets going, we're going to do quick results here. The Road Warriors over the SST to kick things off, 6 minutes 46 seconds. At the end of the match, the SST fire Paulie Dangerously as their manager. Also, should be noted, this concludes the Roadies and SST feud, as Flair is trying to reconfigure some of the storylines and booking here. The Z-Man makes his long-awaited debut. If you guys haven't heard my Z-Man FU story from last episode, make sure you go back and check that out. It's a hoot. And the Z-Man debuts, we learn it is Tom Zink. Although the announcers don't seem to know it's Tom Zink. We do anyway, Steve. And that's what makes us, above and beyond here on the Grenade. And he gets the win in his debut over the Cuban Assassin with the sleeper in only 3 minutes, 36 seconds. Sid Vicious murders poor Ranger Ross with a powerbomb in 1 minute and 8 seconds. We go shopping with Missy Hyatt and Robin Green as Robin announces she has Rick Steiner's American Express card. Don't leave home without it. And Robin goes on a shopping spree. She's buying jewelry, top-of-the-line clothes, everything in the world. And Missy's trying to talk her down. Are you sure we should be doing this? It's very weird to see Missy on that side of the coin. I understand it's to enhance Robin's greediness, but Missy's never one to turn down a shopping spree herself. Robin basically here is like a heel Missy Hyatt.
Yeah, it's the Missy gimmick. Just Robin's doing it right in front of her.
Yeah, so, yes.
Definitely unique.
And we go straight to the ring where it is the Steiners led out by Missy and Robin Green. But we see the tag team champion Freebirds over the Steiner brothers when Robin Green off camera trips Scott Steiner. And the Birds will pick up the win there in 10 minutes, 27 seconds. Flying Brian Pillman squashes his feud with Norman as he gets the win there. In 3 minutes and 38 seconds of the damnedest 3.5 minute match you'll ever see. Most people would argue that you can't have a good match in 3.5 minutes. I would simply respond by showing them this match here.
I concur.
Dr. Death over Mike Rotunda. And I don't think we see Mike on any of these shows either moving forward at this point in time. He's probably going out and buying himself a boat at this point. But Doc over Captain Mike here in 7 minutes, 4 seconds. This is Doc's return from a rib injury. So the Steve Williams is back. United States champion Lex Luger over Wildfire Tommy Rich. So hopefully we never have to see that again. Luger picks up the win by pinfall, 10 minutes, 36 seconds. Then in the main event, it was to be Sting and Flair versus Muta and Terry Funk in tag team action, but Terry Funk's out with a staph infection here, so it winds up being Sting and Flair getting a win over the Great Muta and Dick Slater by disqualification in 19 minutes, 16 seconds, when Terry Funk shows up and suffocates Ric Flair. Yes, he suffocates him with a plastic bag over his head. Holy shit. And he ties it off to go just that extra little bit further, as if the bag wasn't enough. They had to get the full visual out there. And he strangles him with the bag around his head. Holy balls, all the way to the floor. Ric Flair's crawling around with his bag on his head. He's dying, Steve. The Great Muta then on the other side of the ring, if that wasn't enough, Great Muta holds Sting's leg out over the apron so that Dick Slater can get revenge, grabs the branding iron, blasts it, bends it, breaks it almost over Sting's ankle. Of course, Sting already working with a legit injured ankle, so that's why they're doing this story here with Sting's leg to write him off for a couple weeks. But he's all right, and he'll be back soon. But let's go back to the whole suffocation thing here, just for the moment, because it really plays into these entire 3 weeks here of the show. It's crazy with Ric Flair crawling around outside with a bag on his head. And they go to commercial break in the middle of all this, and they come back, and Jim Ross proclaims that Brian Pillman had to resuscitate Ric Flair during the commercial break. Do you know what that means, Steve? That means Ric Flair died during the commercial break, and Jim Ross announced it live on TBS that Ric Flair was apparently dead at one point. And here we are back, and would you believe this? Could you believe this, Steve? TBS and Turner were flooded with complaints. Can you believe that?
I'm shocked. I mean, you knew that was coming. If you ever just go through and read the Observer, just random years, there's some of the stuff that you would think like, oh my God, they're getting complaints about that. Like, are you serious? And I know there was some complaints with Tatanka and what he was doing at some point, which I was like, really? And so, absolutely not surprised at all that this got complaint after complaint. This is one of those next level storylines that you knew it was going to be 50-50. Most people are going to love it. Most people are going to hate it. There was going to be really no in between. Like, it's just wrestling. Who cares? No, this is going to either go and be really bad or really good. It all depended on how you cared. We talked about this on the Monday show. Like, I never took anything serious. So when I've seen it and I'm like, oh, wow, why the hell are you trying to murder somebody on wrestling? That's pretty extreme. And that's kind of how I take it. Like, it's a bit excessive, but it is what it is, man. I never take it too serious.
It was over the top, though. It's really out of the realm of wrestling when you start trying to commit murder. Like, it's a step down from pointing a gun to someone's head. And I'm not referring to Austin and Vince McMahon. I just mean actually like making it perceived like there's going to be a murder going to take place. But yeah, the whole bag on the head, the visual, Ric Flair crawling around trying to breathe. We got upcoming promos from Funk basically saying he'd do it again, but kids don't ever do this. But I'd do it again. Kids don't do it, but I'd do it again if I had the option, or an opportunity. So it's kind of funny as we see all this play together. So we'll talk a little more about that over these 3 weeks, but I had to bring that up here at the beginning of the show so everyone knows what we're talking about when we get to it. We also learned that Woman's, pretty much turning here on the Steiner brothers. And the original plans for Woman's team to challenge the Steiners was actually reportedly Butch Reed and Kevin Sullivan. Of course, we all know why Kevin Sullivan fits into that whole storyline there, wants to keep himself close to his woman. And this was decided as late as mid-September. So right before they filmed the video, or maybe just at the same time they were filming the video, at that point it was supposed to be Butch Reed and Kevin Sullivan as Doom, who will learn to be Doom. Then by the end of September, it switches over to Ron Simmons and Kevin Sullivan. And then there's talk of throwing Butch Reed in there as well, and we'll get to all of that. So at one point, Doom was going to be some sort of a faction of Ron Simmons, Butch Reed, Kevin Sullivan. It's clear the rest of the committee probably had something to do with removing Kevin Sullivan from that, I'm thinking, because lo and behold, Kevin Sullivan gets the book. He gets part of the booking committee, joined the booking committee here, and all of a sudden he's pulled from this whole Doom thing, even though he's part of the vignette, which we'll get to here briefly. But so Jim Cornette replaces Eddie Gilbert on the booking committee at this point, and Kevin Sullivan also joins the booking committee at this point. And we have a new regime in the booking committee. 4 Jims.
Already?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Ric Flair's still there. So, number 1.
Yeah.
But Ric Flair's at the top of the rung here. But the new booking committee consists of 4 Jims. Jim Ross, Jim Cornette, Jim Hurd, Jim Barnett, Jody Hamilton, who's the assassin, Kevin Sullivan, Ric Flair, and basically Flair's there. He's at the top. He determines the programs, the feuds, who's going to be feuding. He decides all the main angles for each feud, and then the main events for TV, because Cornette always said that Flair booked a lot of the main events for TV for himself, like a mark. Not in a bad way, just matches he wanted to see. So I have no problem with that if he's going to go give us good matches week to week because he thinks they're going to, look good on TV. Who thought of that? Putting good wrestling on TV.
Yeah, they could use it, and hopefully we don't get the same sort of finishes that we do in every single big name main event. Double DQ or count out, some shit finish. Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, there's a lot of hands in the cookie jar. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, we'll see if it works long-term or not, but I do like that everybody's relegated to their own job on the booking committee. So Ric Flair's in charge of deciding who's feuding, booking the main matches on TV, and any of the main angles towards those feuds. Jim Cornette and Kevin Sullivan are in charge of writing all of TV now. Ric Flair gives them bullet points. They go out and they put the show together. Jody Hamilton, the assassin, continues to be in charge of bringing in the job guys, things of that nature. Jim Barnett really does nothing, but he's been in the business so long, and he's such a respected name for his contributions to professional wrestling. He's basically here because Jim Hurd likes him. He gets along with Jim Hurd, and he's basically here just in an advisor role. And according to Jim Cornette, Barnett only speaks up when he can agree with Jim Hurd. Otherwise, he stays silent. Jim Ross was given the booking spot because he's the office guy. He's the guy in the office, kind of a liaison between the boys and the office guys involved here. And Jim Herd oversaw things his way, even though he told Ric Flair he was in charge. Sound familiar? Pal, Vince McMahon, telling guys that they could be in charge of booking only to override them. That's what Jim Herd does here from time to time, apparently. Ric Flair wanted more interviews, or at least interviews on the show. You'll actually find, I don't know if you've noticed this, they've really cut back on interviews lately. And that's because Jim Herd wanted less interviews on the shows, because the one thing that Jim Herd picked up from Sam Muchnick in St. Louis was probably the only thing that didn't work anywhere else, and that was Muchnick stuck to wrestling. Very few promos. And so that's what Jim Herd wanted. Doesn't work here so well in 1989. And I got this note from Jim Cornette as well. Jim Herd several times would instruct Jim Ross to change whatever Ric Flair wrote for his show. And Ross would do so because Jim Herd is the boss. But then Ric Flair would get upset at Jim Ross, not knowing that it was Jim Herd who told him to change the show, and Ric Flair would go and change it back. So here we go already, the clusterfuck of doom in the booking committee. As you kind of pointed out as we got into this list, it's already starting here.
Yeah, I mean, when you got somebody who basically does actually call the shots, telling somebody, hey, you can go ahead and call the shots if you want to. At that point, it's just divide and conquer. When you got that many people, you're going to get your sides. That's just the way it's going to go. But when somebody actually has the authority that Ric Flair wants, not much you can do about that. So I would definitely. I mean, Ric Flair obviously has his finger on the pulse of what was going to work in 1989, way more than probably anyone else for the NWA is concerned. And Jim Herd just couldn't get the hell out of the way. So unfortunate.
Yeah, and he'd be there for another, couple years. Quite a while still anyway.
It is.
We learned that Chris Cruz, who got a tryout back in mid-August, he's coming in. And he's going to start commentating for the Worldwide Wrestling Show as they slowly phase Jim Ross out of syndication and only towards the TBS program. So Jim Ross, instead of doing 4 shows, can do 3 now. How lovely.
Hey, I'll take it.
Paulie Dangerously will also be fired here as we get going. We're doing the weekend of the 15th, 16th, 17th. So Paulie was actually fired from the company on September 14th. At a center stage TV taping. So be prepared to see the end of Paulie Dangerously here on this episode of The Grenade, at least for 1989. We'll see one last act as a manager and one last Danger Zone. And that'll be it for Paulie Dangerously here on the 1989 Grenade anyway. Ric Flair, the story goes that Flair told Paulie to go out there and cut a promo on the Danger Zone. Say he's on a worldwide search for new talent. But Paulie decides he's going to go out there and cut his own promo. One of those smart mark promos that we've discussed all year long where Paulie kind of breaks that fourth wall and hints at things and it's basically catering to the smart marks that read the Observer that might know what he's talking about. And he talks about he's not being used up to his potential by the bookers, basically, if you read between the lines in this promo that he cuts. And apparently it didn't sit well with Ric Flair. And obviously I don't know what he was trying to get out of it, because how many people were smart marks in 1989, Steve? How many people were really reading the Observer? There was no internet here. No internet whatsoever. So I don't really know. This is just Paulie being Paulie. And of course, what happens? I guess Flair's standing backstage with Jim Cornette as he's watching this. And Flair says, who is this guy? Who is this fucking guy? Just go out there and say whatever the fuck he wants. And Flair gets pissed off. He's raging backstage. Paulie comes back after he cuts the Danger Zone, and Flair looks at him and goes, you're done. And Paulie says, all right, man, see you tomorrow. And Flair says, no, you're done. You're fucking fired. And Flair, I think I've told this part of the story before, Flair leaves the hallway, closes the door, and then about 5 seconds later, Paulie takes the garbage can and throws it where Ric Flair used to be. And then Paulie leaves. And that's the end of Paulie Dangerously here in 1989.
Yeah, see ya. I mean, you can't do what you want unless you're running ECW, buddy. I mean, if the boss is telling you what to do, you do it.
Yeah, it's wasted talent. I wish Ric Flair could have gotten along with him, but at the same time, Paulie was just getting too big for his britches. It's, a sense of too much too soon. I mean, I know he didn't look it, but Paulie was in his 20s here, mid-20s, 24, something like that. And he's doing this, it's not going to fly. 10 years prior, he would have had the snot beat out of him in the dressing room, and then he would have been fired. So at least Ric Flair was cordial about it and just said, get the hell out of the building.
It is what it is, man.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, he was certainly talented at the beginning of the year during the whole Midnight's feud and whatnot. He's certainly talented. Yeah. He didn't have a whole lot to given to him to do throughout the remainder of the year, but he's certainly held his own. He's certainly better than, some of the other crap laying around out there when we started the beginning of 1989 anyway.
Right. Well, to be honest with you, with Hurd cutting back promos and everything, he really doesn't have a spot if he doesn't have talent. I mean, what is he going to do? Just be a manager? I mean, that just, like you said, that's wasted talent. I mean, he deserves more than that. Same with Cornette. Those guys deserve the mic time and every week to talk. And if that's getting cut out from underneath them, then there's really no point of it, to be honest.
Right. It's also during this time that the politics continue beyond Paulie Dangerously and over to Eddie Gilbert. And so subsequently, Missy Hyatt gets it as well. If you haven't noticed by now, Steve, which I'm sure you have, Eddie Gilbert has been highly de-emphasized on TV into I hate to say this, but jobber to the stars role. Maybe a little higher than that, but certainly not much.
Just brutal. I feel like the worst thing he ever did was bring in Ricky Steamboat. If you think about it, you go all the way back to that. I mean, he brought him in and Steamboat took over, and Eddie's been on a downhill run ever since.
Eddie did fall flat after that initial run with Flair and Wyndham, but yeah. I felt like at the beginning of the first family stuff, Eddie was making a comeback, and I thought it was working.
Rick stole from him there. Rick Steiner did, because remember we had Steiner watch and we had Eddie Gilbert watch kind of at the same time, and Rick took off. It worked, and he got himself back over. I think another thing that really hurt him too is they won the U.S. tag titles, and then they get rid of the U.S. tag titles. So
yeah.
They had a belt, and they don't even get to defend them or do anything with them. So yeah, talk about free falling. This guy went from main feud at the very first start of the year to basically nothing by September, and it's just unfortunate because Eddie's so good.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say too for any old schoolers listening right now. If you haven't listened to older episodes of The Grenade, I'm not calling Eddie Gilbert a jobber to the star. I'm basically trying to describe how he's being booked at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a little more competitive than one of those guys, but he's not winning any matches whatsoever. Unless he winds up accidentally working a jobber in a tag match or something. But the worst part of this may not even be Eddie Gilbert's D push. It may be the fact that within a matter of a few weeks here, Steve, there will be no more Missy Hyatt on our TV screens. I wish I had a reverse boing, because that really saddens me to know that.
You know, womp womp womp.
Oh yeah, the womp womp. So Missy Hyatt's going to be gone here in a matter of a few weeks. Not before showing off one last time, though. At least on this episode of The Grenade on the way out. So if that's the way she goes out, she goes out with a bang for me anyway, or maybe a boing for me. But yeah, it's some for Paulie's gone. Eddie Gilbert's basically working the curtain jerkers, and Missy Hyatt's going to be taken off TV. She's told that she's put on too much weight. Kiss my ass. And on the other side, oh my God, yes, absolutely. And on the other side, people are leaving. People are getting pushed down the card. We may see some new faces coming in here before the end of the year, because Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, the Brainbusters over in WWF, they've given their notice to Vince McMahon. They're leaving the WWF. They should finish up at the Survivor Series. I read the Observer here, and Dave goes into speculation of things they might do with Arn and Tully, form a new horseman to feud with Ric Flair's babyface type horseman, which would have been cool. I don't know how long it would have worked. So Dave's just hypothesizing things. Really, none of it comes to fruition. So I won't really go into all of that. But what did you think? Brainbusters leaving the WWF here for potentially leaving for the NWA.
I've missed them. It would have been awesome to have them on the Grenade here all year round, because they're so much fun to watch. But yeah, it's just a shot in the arm. But I don't think what's weird is on those guys in WWF, they never really looked or felt like WWF guys. They was able to go out there and it reminded you of the NWA every time they worked. They never really adapted to that WWF style or got lazy. I don't know if you could when you're working teams like Demolition, the Hearts, and the Rockers like the whole time that they did. So
shame on you.
They weren't in there.
Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard for not getting lazy like the rest of the guys, like a Jim Duggan, like a one-man gang. Shame on you.
Right. So it's like you didn't really miss anything with them on NWA if you was watching WWF 89 because they was putting on really good matches there, just like they would have in the WWF. So kudos to them for not like falling in that trap. But yeah, that's pretty big. My point in that was I could see it being like a shot in the arm for the NWA to get that talent back, but it's not like you're really taking talent from the WWF because this is talent you already had, and they just took a year piss break and came back. So, and they never, like I said, they never really turned into that WWF gimmick. They just, no music, no nothing. They just came out, kicked people's ass, went left, and no promo time really.
Right.
And so they were just kind of there, and that's
how crazy is that? Two of the greatest talkers of that era, Arn Anderson of any era. And they come to the WWF, and I'm not shitting on Bobby Heenan at all. Obviously, he can cut his own promos, but he basically he pulls the Jim Cornette, and Arn and Tully are not the Midnight Express. They know how to talk. So odd to get one-liners from them at most whenever they were Brainbuster promos. But yeah, I wanted to touch on that because the plan at this point, and I say at this point, is for both Arn and Tully to return to the NWA. We'll see what happens with that when we get there.
Will we have Arn on the Grenade at all?
We should.
This year for 89? He should be back. Okay. Cool. Can't wait. I know what's up with Tully. I know that doesn't happen, but I'm excited to see some Arn Anderson.
We're powering through. No commercials this week. We're going to get going with the show. As the Observer confirms, no Power Hour for September 15th, 1989. I don't know what was going on, a Braves game, typically. And we'll be out of that by the end of this episode of The Grenade as well. The Braves will be done when this episode of The Grenade is done. So hopefully we'll see more 2-hour programs moving forward, as long as college football doesn't get in the way next.
Something's always going to get in the way, man.
We move on to NWA Pro for Saturday morning, September 16, 1989. Pro opening just shows these skyscrapers killing people. What a way to wake up in the morning, just turn on your TV, and there's Sid Vicious and Dan Spivey obliterating job guys as the show opens. They should open the show like this every week.
Yeah, that's going to get you to tune in. You're not going to turn the channel on that. I'll tell you that.
Lance Russell, Bob Caudle still out here. I love the fact that they've been co-hosts for this long. It's so great to have this many episodes of Pro where you can go watch Bob and Lance together. And holy shit, I wrote, Steve, it seems like Pro is much further caught up than it ever had been in weeks past. They seem to be within a week of the right time anyway, instead of 3 or 4 weeks behind. So they mentioned the Clash fallout. And I wrote here, hallelujah, because the Clash was just 4 days ago.
Yeah, congratulations, NWA. At least you got one syndication caught up. Now you just need to slow one down.
That's right. So Pro, which was like 3 weeks behind on content, is now all caught up, apparently. However, Worldwide still a week ahead, but we'll get to Worldwide when we get there. As we go to the ring, and it's Norman out there with Teddy Long in his corner, taking on Tom Branch, a.k.a. Tom Ernesto Jr., son of Tom Ernesto Sr., a.k.a. the Assassin #1, who teamed with Jody Hamilton as the Assassin. So you can kind of guess how Tom Branch got work here in 1989, because I don't think Tom Branch was working that much by this point. But it's always funny when he pops up. And I don't know if you really cued in, and you probably did, to the commentary on this match, because there was no commentary on this match. Lance Russell immediately interrupts the match with a localized promo voiceover I marked out because it reminded me of the Fink when he used to do that on WWF programming and advertising what was coming up to the local arena near you during a unimportant match, if you will. And this was so cool. Lance took so long to run down this localized show that the match was finished. Norman got the win before Lance even finished doing the voiceover, to the point where you could tell the Fink wasn't really watching the match when he was doing his voiceover work. Lance Russell was, because when Norman drops the the Batcave spot, Lance Russell makes a comment. So he's actually trying to fit this in while he's watching this match and still can't get it all in. There's no commentary. It's tremendous because it's Lance Russell doing the localized promo. So stealing another page out of the WWF's book here. And I just marked out for it. They had never done this before as Norman picks up the win with the Batcave, the knees and the balls to the face in 1 minute and 24 seconds.
It's pretty cool. I did pick up on it. I was like, man, he's going the whole match. One thing on this match, so I do want to say, I thought Teddy Long slapping Norman at the beginning of this to get him psyched up and get him in that zone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is what the gimmick should have been all along because it's an easy face turn when you want to get there. You know, he just gets fed up with Teddy Long beating him up and slapping him and doing those things,
right? Where
you can get that empathy put on him. So I felt like if they'd done this gimmick from the get-go, where Norman or Long was just using him as a big guy to beat the hell out of people, and he's roughing him up, kind of like the Kamala gimmick a little bit, just
right.
Maybe a little bit more intense. I feel like it could have worked a lot more. But I don't know if this is just a one-off or what, but him slapping him and then he just goes in and destroys this guy it was a nice change of pace. And
he slapped Norman after the Pillman match at the Clash. So it seems to be an ongoing thing. I know Norman's going to eventually turn, so I'm sure we'll see a few more slaps come into play here if Norman ever gets back on TV anyway. And I just finished praising Pro for being caught up. And then they go and do this, Steve. They air an old episode of Funk's Grill. Even though Pro's never aired any episode of Funk's Grill, they go and air a 3-4 week old episode of Funk's Grill with Norman the Lunatic, where Brian Pillman comes in and Norman grabs him from behind and Funk slaps Pillman around. And my only note here, really, I mean, at the end of the day was, why are they showing this? The Clash happened 4 days ago. Pillman got his revenge. He beat Norman. The feud's over. This is very, very poor timing. It just felt like they needed a segment to slide in here, and this is the first one they found.
I've given up on trying to figure out what they're trying to do production-wise and doing these shows. It is what it is. I don't even care.
Back to the ring. World Tag Team Champion Freebirds take on Agent Steel and Lee Scott. And Lee is starting to win over some of the announcers. We heard Wahoo last time put over Lee Scott. This time, Lance calls him a gamer. That Lee Scott is a gamer. And the Freebirds, even against job guys, stalling garbage begins the match. They fuck around with the fans. They change corners where they want to tag in and out. It takes 90 seconds after the bell rings before they finally lock up. Worse yet, Michael Hayes works the entire match by himself. Who does he think he is, the SkyScrapers? While Jimmy Garvin stands in the corner with his jacket on. Agent Steel surprises Hayes with a bunch of near falls, but Michael Hayes back with a DDT, of course, on Lee Scott. And finally, Jimmy Garvin wants to tag in. Jimmy Garvin comes in, he takes his jacket off, but leaves his sunglasses on and the World Tag Title belt around his waist as he kneels on poor Lee Scott to get the win. 4 minutes, 46 seconds. Cool finish. Jimmy Garvin's cool here. Too bad he has a shit partner.
Oh, yeah, he's dealing with Michael Hayes. But no, Scott gets nailed with the left hand while he's charging into the corner. And it was very well done. It was an awesome looking spot. It looked really good. Well, other than that, yeah, unfortunately, you get 4.5 minutes of Michael Hayes fluffing his hair.
It's time for Pedicino Knows, and he's plugging that upcoming Worcester Mass debut on September the 27th, and he's running down the lineup, and I just wrote, what a fucking lineup. And I'm not going to go over here. I actually didn't even jot it down, but it's basically what everyone else was getting at the time. But every one of your the WWF had an A show, a B show, sometimes a C show on the same day with different talent kind of dispersed everywhere to make as much money as they possibly could. The NWA was running typically one show a day with their entire lineup, their entire roster, their upper card. And it's just huge from top to bottom. I can't believe the issues they had selling out some of the arenas here. We get the typical Terry Funk, Ric Flair promos. They may have been replay promos from past weeks as well. I'm not really sure there, but just what a card. Flair and Funk in an I Quit match, Sting and Muda and all that stuff up and down the line.
In a way, you wish the NWA or the just Turner's NWA just had an owner or something that was as driven as Vince McMahon was. where it just wasn't, oh, I like wrestling, so I'll pay for it. Who cares? That kind of how it feels with Ted Turner there. If they had the backing and things that Vince did and took those things and executed them as well as Vince did, there's absolutely no way they couldn't have contended because, man, these lineups, if you look at them back on them 30 years from now, like now, holy shit, sign me up to go to some of those shows. I mean, goodness. Just the names and the matches that you're seeing, it's just incredible. You don't probably realize it then, but now, like looking back in revisionist history, obviously, man, just tremendous lineup, top to bottom. I mean,
I think everybody was spoiled back then.
Mind-blowing.
You know, all these guys were coming every time. So I'll catch it next time. No big deal. And now you wish you'd went to each and every one of these because it is a big deal. You're not getting this anymore.
Oh, no, absolutely not. It's kind of funny. I saw somebody post on Facebook. He's like, at some point, you're going to go play with your friends outside for the last time, and nobody's ever going to realize it because you just assume, well, it'll be there next time. But then there's no more next time, and it's like, dang, it's all gone. I wish I was, 10, maybe even 20 years older than I am. That way I was an adult during this time and I could go do what I wanted to do and enjoy.
I would have been making road trips for days back in those days.
I would have made hell where I live. We had like Delco and guides, so I could have been making some killer money and just wasted it on going to see wrestling, and I would have been happy.
Promo time. Bob Caudle standing with Terry Funk and Gary Hart. Caudle says they could have killed Ric Flair at the Clash. Gary Hart says they accomplished what they set out to do, but next time they're going to finish Ric Flair off for good. Terry Funk says it was okay for Ric Flair to use the branding iron on Dick Slater, but Terry Funk can't escalate things? Retaliate? Terry Funk says they took the air out of Flair. And Gary Hart mentions the incident by name. Says they put the bag over Flair's head and basically suffocated him. I couldn't believe here on syndication they're actually saying these words. I get it on the Clash show. I just couldn't believe they said exactly what they did here on the Pro show. It just kind of surprised me that they went into detail, knowing that all of these calls were made and complaints and things.
It's probably recorded ahead of time and they don't even care. They're not going to go back and look. But no, this was I love they took the air out of Flair. I thought that was great. Nice play on words. I don't know I'm sure it's Funky intended to do it, but yeah, this promo was really good. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I can't believe they did it on syndication of all things. Now you're just gonna get even more complaints because more people are seeing it. Theoretically, it's syndication.
Right. Back to the ring. It's the All-Americans they're announced as again this week. We heard that way back in the summer. They get it again here. The All-Americans, the Steiner brothers, led to the ring by Missy Hyatt and Robin Green taking on Rusty Riddle and the Bounty Hunter. Riddle's body looked like chewed bubble gum here, so somebody told him to go find some body gear, and now he's got like surfer gear on. Maybe he's trying out for the third member of the Dynamic Dudes. He'd certainly fit in well. I wrote
the original Sandman.
Yeah, that's exactly what he looked like there. The original Sandman. Couldn't put it better. I wrote here, what the fuck is Missy wearing? Fucking coveralls, looking like a mechanic with a figure. That's pretty much how the best way I could describe it. Literally looked like she was a mechanic. She had a figure to her. I mean, she's still a gorgeous mechanic, but could you cover up any more of the body if you tried?
No, probably not. But man, sometimes women are sexy when they're a little underdressed. Nothing wrong with wearing coveralls and.
I like my Missy. A little more cleavage.
How she shows up later. I did put down here she's way too conservative and it's not a good thing.
It's ridiculous. Bob Caudle, meanwhile, he sells Robin Green's demeanor, says she's very serious. She's not smiling during the squash match. Missy Hyatt actually stands on not the opposite side of the ring, but around the corner. They're on opposite sides of the ring, and Missy kind of peeks over with a glaring look a few times at Robin, and the camera picks it up. So shit's up somewhere. Scott Steiner with the Steiner line on Rusty Riddle takes his face off. And then Rick Steiner with the release German before Rick with a belly-to-belly on the Bounty Hunter, which the camera misses. And Rick Steiner gets the win there. 4 minutes. The Steiner brothers pick up the win. We move on. It's time for Pedicino Knows Again. Pedicino invites everyone to write a letter to tell your cable company to offer the NWA pay-per-views. So we're not just having that issue over in the WWF, because if you remember, the no holds barred at the end of it, they actually used the time to promote writing in and complaining to your cable companies for not picking up the Royal Rumble. So this must have been a thing in both companies at this point. Pay-per-view companies maybe not picking up the wrestling pay-per-views.
This is where the feud came in, right? And when the cable company said, you guys need to quit doing all the stupid shit that you're doing to get at one another. And I'm wondering if this is their tactic. Hey, you need to cut it out. Because I'm pretty sure it happened around WrestleMania 5. There's things going on that they were trying to do to each other's pay-per-views and hurting them. So the cable companies were suffering because they're doing things to sabotage their pay-per-view business. And so the cable companies is like, y'all need to stop. And I wonder if this is part of it. This is their leverage or whatever.
Joe also pimps the Worcester Mash show coming up. We get promos, localized promos from the Freebirds and Jim Cornette on that one. And back to the ring again. Ron Simmons teaming with the Cuban Assassin. This is post-Iron Sheik, so I have no idea why Ron Simmons is being forced to team with the Cuban, but he is, as they take on Wildfire Tommy Rich and Flying Brian. Poor Flying Brian was scheduled to team with Sting, according to the announcers, but Sting was injured at the Clash. And this had to be confusing to the fans who were there, since this match was actually filmed before the Clash. But I'm nitpicking because even WWF did that at times, recorded things before they happened. Obviously, they would put belts on guys, record things before they won the belts, and try to explain it away to the local crowd or whatever. But anyways, Sting's out. Tommy Rich is in, so I'm sure Brian Pillman's loving that.
It's going to make him look better. Anything compared to Tommy Rich is going to look better, let's be honest.
Brian Pillman busts out an enziguri, or to quote Lance Russell, a flying foot kick on the Cuban early on, tags to Tommy Rich, who comes in with a armbar. The Cuban botches everything in this match for Brian Pillman. He botches the enziguri, he botches the sling blade, he botches a plancha in which Pillman lands on his head on the floor. But the Cuban doesn't manage to botch Tommy Rich's armbar earlier on in the show, so at least he got that right. And again, Tommy Rich back in, and the Cuban doesn't botch the headlock that Tommy Rich applies either. The heels wind up taking over, getting... Well, you'd be surprised. The heels get heat on Tommy Rich, but Brian Pillman winds up getting the hot tag with Ron Simmons. The Cuban doesn't even bother to feed right away. He tags out to Simmons, goes and stands on the apron. Brian Pillman starts bumping Simmons around and just stops and looks over at the Cuban like, what the fuck? Get in here. It was ridiculous. Ron Simmons, though, with a spine buster on Brian Pillman, spine busters him into next year. But Tommy Rich breaks up the count. The heels come in together. They toss Brian Pillman to the apron. Slingshot sunset flip on the illegal Cuban does Brian Pillman, but the Cuban drops his knees down onto Brian and grabs Ron Simmons' hand from the apron. But Tommy Rich kicks the hands free. The Cuban goes rocking backwards. He botches a fucking sunset flip, Steve. All he had to do, he was already sitting on top of Brian Pillman's chest. All the Cuban had to do was lay back. That's it. And he somehow manages to botch that. Are you fucking kidding me? Pure garbage. This guy should have been fired along with Paul Lee. The baby faces get the win with that sunset in 6 minutes. The Cuban has been pretty solid. He was a solid hand in the territory days. He didn't look very good here.
No, he did not. And he should have been sent home with Iron Sheik. He's been hanging out with Sheik too long, man.
Oh, that's even a better idea. Yeah, they should have been. Yeah, absolutely.
Should have been a package deal there. But yeah, he's just very slow, and that could have been it. I don't want to make up an excuse or anything for him because, like you said, all he had to do was just lay back on the sunset flip. But Pillman is just so fast and so fluid and looks so clean and crisp that guys like, Cuban Assassin and those types are just not going to look good because they don't have their working shoes on against Pillman. They're going to look like shit, and they're going to make Pillman look like shit. So
yeah, they do move at different speeds, and that is very true.
So, you throw him in there with Norman, who's up for it, and they have history, no problem. Assassin's tapped, dude. He's a jobber to the stars, and he doesn't give a shit. So he's going to just flop back and butcher a sunset flip.
Yeah. What's even funnier is I read that the NWA is starting up their Spanish announce team, and they even give him spots doing commentary on the initial Spanish announce team here in the fall of 89. So they have no idea what they're doing with him, and I can't really blame them, I suppose. But still, man, just lay back. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not hard. Maybe he's better at announcing than he is wrestling at this point.
I would have no idea. I doubt he lasted very long doing that either. Promo time with the Road Warriors and Precious Paul Ellering. Hawk once again says the SST are the Samoan squat team. And now that they're done with the SST, the Road Warriors call out the Freebirds and the SkyScrapers. They say the SkyScrapers are definitely the biggest, but it doesn't make them the baddest. Animal says everyone wrestles better than the Road Warriors, which I kind of found funny, but nobody fights better than the Road Warriors. I get what he was trying to say, but still, do you really want to go out there and say everyone is better wrestlers than us? I get what he was getting at, but it's still, I don't know, man.
Yeah, you never want to devalue your in-ring talent. I mean, everybody's better. The dynamic dudes are better wrestlers than the Road Warriors.
Well, maybe Shane Douglas. I don't know about Johnny Ace. But
well,
Animal doesn't want to bury his own brother.
That's true. But, Johnny has those 5-star matches that everybody likes to talk about.
Everybody likes to talk about?
People throw it up that he has more 5-star matches than people like CM Punk and Shawn Michaels. So you can take that for what you want. But
he may have been involved in more 5-star matches. I don't know that he had the 5-star matches. Lots of tag teaming over there in All Japan, I'll tell you that.
Well, that's the benefit that he has, hanging out in All Japan.
Apparently he did tag teaming a lot better in Japan than he did here in the United States, because there's no way he was getting 5-star matches working these dude type matches here. We close out the show. This would have been a fun one if they given him 10 minutes on a main event or something just for the hell of it. It's the Midnight Express taking on the State Patrol. And now the State Patrol are from Speed Trap, Mississippi. I looked that up, Steve. It doesn't exist. I was disappointed. Usually when these funny named cities are mentioned, they actually exist. And they make me chuckle when I find out that they exist. But Speed Trap, Mississippi is not a thing. Very disappointed. I would be very disappointed if I drove through Speed Trap, Mississippi and didn't see a speed trap either, I guess.
Yeah.
During this match, we have a little miscommunication, to say the least, as Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker takes Bobby Eaton's swinging neckbreaker the opposite way. And this is the second time this has happened this year with Bobby, and I love how Bobby sells it. Because Bobby's an old schooler, man. He doesn't just follow through with something for the hell of doing it. If it's not going to look good, he doesn't do it. If you're not going to sell, he's going to make you sell. And here Bobby goes to do the swinging neckbreaker one way, Buddy Lee Parker bumps the other way, and so Bobby just stands there. Doesn't even complete the move. Just stands there and looks down at him like, you're an idiot. Which I thought was pretty funny. The Patrol do briefly take over with some basic heel stuff, but Bob Eaton rams Buddy Lee Parker's head right into a waiting James Earl right in the corner, and Stan Lane blind tags in. Double clothesline by the Midnight Express, and they pick up a win on Buddy Lee Parker. 4 minutes, 52 seconds to close the show. And it's off to Worldwide for September 16th. Worldwide, the show that is ahead of what's actually going on in the world of the NWA. So we'll kind of get a glimpse of some of the things to come in the NWA here as part of Worldwide.
Probably. You never know what you're going to get with Worldwide.
No, and I jumped the gun here because my first note as I started doing it was, holy shit, they're on track 2 now. They're not a week ahead, because what do they open up with? Clash of the Champions highlights. Well, that makes sense. The Clash just happened. So at this point, I assumed they were on track like pro. They fixed everything. Ric Flair, hallelujah, he fixed it all. But no, we find out pretty quickly that's not the case here this week. Teddy Long promo. We'll see the undefeated SkyScrapers, the next World Tag Team Champions, in action as the SkyScrapers take on Rusty Riddle, Lynn Wagner, and you can tell Arsenio Hall was a thing here in 1989 because Jim Ross won't shut up about Teddy Long knowing Arsenio Hall. I grew up, I watched Arsenio. He was a wrestling fan, so that really, it was bonus points. He always interviewed some of the more younger people while Johnny Carson was doing a lot of the older people, that's how I come to know all of the old acting, guard and the new acting guard. I kind of watched both shows from time to time. Arsenio was pretty big, 89, 90, 91. And he would bring the wrestlers on there, typically the WWF guys. So it's funny that Jim Ross keeps dropping the name, though. I don't know why he's trying to lump Long in with Arsenio, but I guess they tried to do that whatever was really huge in the urban community at the time or whatever, because Later on, Teddy Long starts doing the Homie the Clown bit, Homie Don't Play That, which he ripped off of In Living Color as well. So just seemed to be an ongoing thing with Teddy Long, trying to keep up with the players, so to speak.
It sounds like lay, play, and parlay, baby.
That's right. That's his line right now here in September. Lay, play, and parlay, whatever that means. I'm not familiar with that one. What's that?
I'm not. I was trying to figure it out myself. I was watching ahead a little bit for next week's show, and I asked my friend, I was like, "Can you tell me what lay, play, and parlay means?" He's like, "I couldn't tell you." I was like, "Yeah, I couldn't either." That's what
I'll tell you what. I grew up in the inner city. I got bussed. I went to school with just about every ethnicity. I knew everyone. I hung out with everyone. I heard all the slang of the late '80s and early '90s. And I got to tell you, man, I never heard it either. I actually Googled it. I'm like, is this one I missed? I don't remember this one. And I Google it, and it does not exist. So this is a Teddy Long thing, best I can tell anyway.
Well, if he ever does a virtual signing, I'm going to have to sign it lay, play, and parlay.
I'm sure he'll mark out. Teddy Long, a follower of the Grenade. As this match gets going, Sid clotheslines Lynn Wagner's head off and then runs over and drop kicks Riddle off the apron. That was insane. Did you see that? Sid clotheslines one guy, jumps up, runs over, and dude was not expecting it. He was just kind of dozing off over there, daydreaming on the apron. Sid runs over and drop kicks the guy of all things. Just looked crazy.
Sid, man, what a talent. When he was trying to get himself over the things he was doing, it's crazy, man. It's really cool to see. You can tell those guys that are hungry and want to get over. I don't know if that really probably ever heard that about Sid, but some of these guys, they just want to do things to get themselves noticed, and he's definitely one of them.
Sid winds up powerbombing Wagner for the win in 49 seconds. There were 3 things that killed in 1989, Steve: AIDS, crack, and Sid Vicious.
Probably put Sid at the top.
Take your choice.
Man.
It's time for From the Pages of the World Wrestling Figure. No, it's the NWA. NWA Update. What? They didn't even try to change the name. NWA Update. It's a new segment, Steve. And basically all they do is they talk about the Steiner's Birds match. We see the match joined in progress. Where's the news is what I wrote. It's supposed to be updates. It's supposed to give us some kind of new news in the NWA here, but it's really just a recap of the Steiners and Birds match at the Clash. Not exactly WWF style effective, but I marked out that they're trying to come up with a update segment here in the NWA. Now if they just change the name to not make it so obvious.
Yeah, they should have named it NWA Wrap Up to match their magazine that they had at the time.
That's too clever.
Would have been pretty cool, and it actually fits, wrap up what's going on in the NWA.
Well, I was disappointed. I was like, when they said NWA Update, I'm like, oh, what is this? And then it's just Clash recap, and it doesn't help it at all that immediately after NWA Update, they show recaps of 3 more matches from the Clash: Luger over Rich, Roadies over SST, and then the whole Sting Flair suffocation angle as well. And which Jim Ross proclaims they're going to choke the life out of the champion. So more murder here on Worldwide this time. And it's off to Pedicino Knows. And they ponder, will Terry Funk be suspended? Pedicino wants Funk suspended forever. What did Terry do? Eat Pedicino's last cheeseburger?
Definitely possible.
Joe says he talked to everyone at the Clash about the World Tag Team title match. He talked to the Steiners. He talked to Missy Hyatt. He talked to Woman. He talked to the Birds. Some say Missy did it. Some say Robin did it. You've already proven that Missy didn't do it, Steve, so we know who did it. And we'll find out here on this episode of The Grenade. I promise you that.
I'm
Promo time.
Anticipation.
I know, I'm sure you are, especially since you've already watched it. Promo time with Gary Hart and Dirty Dick Slater, because I just wanted to say Dirty Dick. Gary Hart doesn't condone what Terry Funk did, which contradicts his promo where he said they did exactly what they set out to accomplish. But here he doesn't condone what Terry Funk did on Worldwide. Gary Hart also says Terry Funk arrived at the Clash unbeknownst to him, which again makes no sense because the entire Clash was spent Gary Hart saying that Terry Funk was in the building. Even though here in this promo he claims unbeknownst to him, Terry Funk showed up at the Clash. I don't get it. Makes no sense to me. Hart proclaims he would have not allowed Funk to suffocate Flair had he known that that's what Terry had in mind, which again makes no sense because Gary Hart said on Pro that that was their intentions. Slater finally joins the promo. He shows off his broken arm. His cast says it's going to get even more violent. More violent than murder, Dick Slater? Then I realized, well, it is Dick Slater. He did try to murder his girlfriend, so it is what it is. And Gary Hart says he will shock Ric Flair even worse next time. Even worse than attempted murder? What the fuck?
Well, shock is the word there, but yeah, he contradicted himself. Everything he said at the beginning, like he wouldn't have done it, he wouldn't have done it. But hey, at the end, you know what? We see him again. It's going to be a lot worse than what happened last time. So
yes.
Then why would you stop Funk from trying to kill him if you're going to do worse the next time? So it makes no sense. Gary Hart's just kind of all over the place, and not a bad promo, but at least consistent.
That's the funny part. It wasn't really a bad promo. It's just the consistency is what fucking boggles my mind there. And we get another promo, this time from Jim Cornette. Like the fans, Jim Cornette, too, thought the dudes were a flash in the pan. Amen, brother. But they beat the Samoan SWAT team in their pay-per-view debut, and they've beaten other teams since then, though Cornette can't name them by name. Then Johnny Ace suffered the injury, the cheekbone injury. Supposedly the dudes went to Jim Cornette while they were away, and they asked Jim to manage them. Corny mentions that he only manages one team, the Midnight Express, but he will advise the dudes for guidance. What's the difference? Next week, Corny will be in the corner of the dudes to take on the New Zealand militia for revenge. So, two things here in this promo real quick, and we can move on. One was Cornette basically, like you just mentioned it too. What's the difference between managing and advising? It's a blurred line there that I'm not understanding. It's also funny, he doesn't really come out and say this, but the way he words some things, it sounds like he's saying, the dudes are the team of the future. The Midnights are the team of right now. But one day the Midnights won't be good anymore, and I need somebody to jump onto. So that's why I'm doing this. It's the way I took it anyway.
Yeah, I can see that point of view, and it makes sense. Cornette just playing the field and getting ready because the Midnights ain't going to be around forever. But yeah, like I'm with you. He comes out and he's ringside with these guys. How is that different from managing? Advising is like, hey, we got a match with the New Zealand militia. Should we take it or not? Or what should we do when we get into the match? Advise them in the backstage area, and that's the end of it. So why are you coming ringside with them? That's managing. So, again, mixed signals. They don't know what they're doing. They're saying shit, but they're not doing what they're saying. Right. And this is a kind of across the board. So you can fry your brain trying to figure all this out.
Midnight Express on their way to the ring with manager Jim Cornette, taking on Gene Ligon. Good to see him in the area. And Mark Reagan. Jim Ross and Paul E. Dangerously joins commentary here. I was a little confused why Paul E. did so. But then we find out that next week during the Dudes and Militia match, Paul E. has decided he's going to be in the corner of the militia since he had managed Jack Victory in the past. Seemed a little odd. I guess they just needed somebody to play off of, though. And the Vegematic on Mark Reagan ends this one in 4 minutes and 25 seconds. And it's off to Pedicino Knows again. He claims Paul E. Dangerously is going to retire from managing. The SST has also disappeared. Pedicino reiterates that Cornette is only advising the dudes. They make sure to use that word early and often whenever they talk about Cornette and the dudes here.
All the time.
Back to the ring, it's Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert with no Missy Hyatt. Taking on Flying Brian Pillman. They've already wrestled one time on World Championship Wrestling. Of course, if you remember, they show a clip from center stage where Pillman gets the win on Gilbert in their first match, but Gilbert has foot under the rope. So technically, the fall should have never counted. So this is basically their first rematch, even though this isn't really mentioned on World Championship Wrestling. Eddie Gilbert has words with Pillman to start, and he won't shake Brian's hand. Immediately, Eddie Gilbert slaps Flying Brian, but Pillman sends him to the floor, and Hot Stuff is frustrated. Lots of grappling in the ring back and forth. Brian Pillman with a crossbody, but Eddie floats over the top, gets a 1, the 2, Pillman kicks out. Pillman returns with an O'Connor roll. Eddie Gilbert kicks out of that, sends Brian Pillman to the floor. But Pillman back up on the apron. Eddie Gilbert comes running at him and shoulder blocks Pillman, almost like that Big E spot where he shoulder blocks the guy through the ropes to the floor, but Eddie ain't no dummy. He's not taking that bump, that dive to the outside. So Eddie kind of falls gingerly to the floor. Nothing wrong with that. And they wind up fighting on the floor, fighting on the apron. Eddie Gilbert pops Brian Pillman. Pillman bumps over the top rope, back inside the ring, and Eddie Gilbert winds up getting counted out on the apron. Even though he had 1 foot back in the ring as well, lame finish. I don't care about the count out so much. I understand Brian Pillman has to stay undefeated, but the way they did it, I wasn't really a fan. And it's almost looking at this point like Nick Patrick is a crooked referee. Brian Pillman winner here, count out, 6 minutes, 15 seconds. And it really feels like a heel turn is coming, even though one is not.
Yeah, that's that's the logical step here, is the heel turn. But obviously with Flair not a huge fan of Eddie Gilbert, and they're just getting phased out, it's not in the cards. But they could have used some heels in that mid-card range to work, and Eddie would have been perfect for that. So it's unfortunate he didn't get that opportunity, because I feel like he could have fit in nicely there.
Politics, man, politics.
Politics as usual. They'll kill everybody. So it's unfortunate for sure.
Oh, I got so excited. I heard there was a promo upcoming with the Fantastics, Steve, one of my favorite teams of that 1980s era. Then I saw the Fantastics and I said, hey, that is not Tommy Rogers, who basically was the Fantastics, if you ask me anyway. And that's not taking away from Bobby Fulton. He was a great complimentary partner. But Tommy Rogers, man, he made that team for me. And instead, it's the new Fantastics. It's the team of Bobby Fulton. He's back with his real-life brother, Jackie Fulton. So I guess Tommy Rogers is not coming back to the NWA. He's happy just doing his Japanese tour dates and then working a real job on the side. So it's the new Fantastics, the Fulton brothers, if you will. Why did they just call them the Fulton brothers? They're really trying to get something out of this team as a new Fantastics. Are you shitting me? Anyways, they're coming back. They're going to be here next week. They haven't even wrestled yet, and they already have a World Tag Team title match scheduled with the Freebirds. How did they pull that shit off?
Beats the hell out of me, man. I guess it's who you know. Like you said, politics, right?
We close the show. It's the Dynamic Dudes being advised at ringside by Jim Cornette, taking on the team of, look at this, Randy Rose is back, at least here on this taping, teaming with the Cuban Assassin. And Randy Rose still announced from the dark side. So the dudes, I don't know. I wonder what Cornette feels about this. You know, we got a former member of the original Midnight Express out here in Randy Rose. I wonder if he's looking for a little more revenge here. Randy's working on the heel side of things after seeing him used as a babyface back in the summer. I guess here he's just a jobber, and it really doesn't matter what side of the ring he's on. Rose misses a top rope splash and takes the wipeout, and boy, does he fold in half. Great bump by Randy Rose for the dudes. Tried to make him look good anyway. Dudes pick up the win, just 2.5 minutes. And other than Cornette, it's right back to the same old dudes here, Steve, is what I wrote. I think this is the first time we're seeing them upon their return in the ring, and it's the same old dudes. Same theme song, same gear, same entrance, same wipeout finisher, same shit timing in the ring. Nothing has changed or improved about their work whatsoever. They had the opportunity to tweak some shit while they had time out or time off, and they didn't. Other than Jim Cornette joining them, it's the same exact dudes.
Yeah, I put down here the last note I have for this match was they're still sloppy as hell and look like shit. So I agree with you there. I will say, I don't want to give too much, but they do seem to get a little bit better in the next couple times that we see them. I will give them that. They change up the gear a little bit, and they do get a little bit better. So not much. Better in their standards. On the Dynamic Dudes curve, they get better. On a Midnight Express curve, they're the same.
It's off
same
to the
shit, different toilet.
605 program, World Championship Wrestling for September 16th, taped just 2 days prior on the 14th at Center Stage. This is the show where Paulie Dangerously was fired. Jim Cornette is now the new TV booker, so Jim Cornette is also now the new co-host of World Championship Wrestling. Coincidence? I don't know, but I'm not complaining. Jim Ross needs somebody out there with him, and somebody that can work well with him, and somebody that we can see week to week and get accustomed to, rather than changing it up every other week.
I agree. Cornette's awesome with Ross. They do great on Power Hour, but he doesn't necessarily call the matches. So him being the co-host and calling the matches on Saturday night, definitely fine with me.
Ron Simmons takes on Rick Ryder to kick things off. Ryder pounces Ron, but Ron no-sells the punches, and Ryder off the top rope to the floor. It was hilarious. Did you see where Simmons picked him up, put him on the top rope, and then knocked him off to the floor? I actually laughed out loud.
I did too.
It was a fun little squash match for Ron. We don't get to see him work these lengthy squash matches very long. Just toys with Ryder all match long before the spine buster of death does it here. 4 minutes, 28 seconds. Ron Simmons looks good.
I will say, like, the problem, though, like, when you turn on this show, the file or whatever that we have, the tape, it starts with Ron Simmons in the ring with Rick Ryder. So my initial thought was, oh, here we go again. He's a partner with somebody. I thought these were a tag team, so I had to rewind it, like, who's his partner? Because I was waiting for the tag team to come out to fight him. So I was like, that just goes to show how terrible, Ron Simmons was booked up to this point. But outside of that, like, he killed him with that. That spine buster's coming into play, and he's killing people with this. So I'm here for that.
Here's the funny thing. The Clash was on the 12th. This was taped on the 14th, aired on the 16th. The limo angle was shot the following week. So it was last minute, no doubt, that Ron Simmons was thrown into this whole Doom thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have him here on Saturday night exposing him so that when Doom appears, you can basically immediately right away say, oh, that's Ron Simmons. Not that you couldn't anyway, but the longer he's off TV before you actually show him, maybe less people will realize it. Whereas here, he's on TV. The next week, you can hear his voice, and we'll get to that when we get to it. But it's crazy that's how quick, they came up with Ron Simmons joining Doom. It was last minute, basically.
I wonder if this match did it. Maybe somebody was watching, like, oh, shit, this dude would go perfect with Butch Reed.
I tell you what, though. Well, they thought that back in the summer when Ron Simmons said, I don't want to team with Butch Reed and be called the Ebony Experience, but I'll team with Butch Reed and be called Doom now and be managed by a woman and be behind a woman because I'd rather do that than team with the Iron Sheik. So Ron Simmons knows what's up at this point in his career.
Yes, he does.
They go to a promo with Ron. Jim Ross actually interviews Ron Simmons. Other than the brief time he spoke on that Danger Zone with the Iron Sheik several weeks back, I believe this is the first real promo we've gotten from Ron Simmons. And he's, other than the little bit of time he stayed away during the summer, Ron Simmons has been here basically for most of the year. And we're just now hearing from him. Simmons says he doesn't care about the fans. He didn't care about the fans at Florida State when he played for the college. He's a 4-time All-American, a Heisman Trophy candidate. He never needed the fans for any of that. He's done more in 89 than most 80-year-olds have done in their entire life. I don't know about that, Ron, but you do accomplish quite a bit moving forward. He says he doesn't care about the fans. He said, you've opened Pandora's box and let the demon out. I love that line, the way he delivered it. It was really good. He's going to revolutionize the sport. Word. Don't step to Ron. I thought it was a great promo, and he's finally allowed to talk just in time for him not to be allowed to talk.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, too. It established what they wanted him to be. It is crazy to think about, like you said, how spur of the moment Doom was. It's just crazy. He was on here. It looks like he was ready for a singles push, being one of those mid-card heels that I just talked about. And next thing you know, like you said, he can't talk anymore. So it was a really good promo. Definitely one people should go check out if you can.
Do you remember at the top of the show, we talked about Lex Luger falling off the middle rope and then being humble enough to tweet us back and have a laugh at it? Well, just stick with me here for this match coming up. It's Scott Steiner, led to the ring by Brother Rick and Robin Green. No Missy Hyatt in sight. I put sad face here in my notes. Scotty taking on Gene Ligon. And Ligon was a tremendous enhancement worker in his prime. In his prime, Steve. I just don't know if he's going to keep up with guys like Scott Steiner. But on their way to the ring, Rick Steiner finds a kid in the crowd and actually brings him over. The kid's wearing headgear like Rick, so Rick takes a liking to him. But as the match gets going, and this is what I was referring to when I talked about Lex Luger taking that fall.
Ow! Right in the schnoz!
Scott Steiner runs off the ropes and holy shit, falls through the ropes. The back of his head bounces off the top rope and he slides through the rope. Takes a nasty bump out to the floor. And I wrote, how was this not edited? They edited Sid and Scott Hall for being terrible, but they leave this on the show here with Scott Steiner making an ass of himself as the announcers have to try to cover it up. Scott Steiner basically trying to bounce off the ropes and just goes 100 miles an hour through the ropes to the floor.
He ate it really good. Did you send this video to him? I doubt you get the same response.
I have not. Neither Steiner is very active on Twitter, unfortunately, because believe me, I looked a long time ago. I wanted to send Rick about 400 things. So neither Steiner too active on there.
He'd probably get a laugh out of it, to be honest with you.
I know. Yeah, at the end of the day, I think he's a little more lighthearted than he lets on or that people really see in him based on some of the things I've seen. But Gene Ligon screwed up a few spots in this match, and I was just waiting for Scott Steiner to murder him, but he's actually pretty nice to him. He just keeps working with him. I don't know if that's some kind of respect there or whatever, because Ligon's been around quite a while, but then again, they've thrown around the Iron Sheik and things, so who knows? Jim Ross says Rick is nice, and speaking of nice, and they show Robin Green there, Jim Cornette says Rick has found himself 2 little friends, maybe 3. Jesus.
I wonder if they got any complaints for that stuff.
I doubt it. I'm sure the only people that got those jokes were males laughing at it, so.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Scott Steiner is still not really roughing up Gene Ligon very much. Actually, lots of rest holds by Scott Steiner here. Frankensteiner, and I caught here that Jim Cornette asked Jim Ross, has that move been named yet? And Jim Ross said it has not, so I think Cornette's wheels are beginning to spin there. Tiger Bomb by Scott Steiner. Pulled out the old Pearl River Plunge here in 1989. Over the head, belly to belly, dumps Ligon right on his head. Not intentionally, it's just how Ligon took it, but it was nasty. And then Scotty finishes him off, rolling belly to belly. 5 minutes gets the win. Ligon was solid in his day, and I'm sure he's still fine here with other guys down the card. I'm sure Ligon could work an excellent match, if you want to call it that, with a guy like Tommy Rich. But Scott Steiner, not really Ligon's cup of tea here in 89. Scott Steiner probably just not on the same pace.
Did you just say Tommy Rich could put on an excellent match?
I said if you want to call it that. I meant he could work a good match without screwing anything up. That's what I meant.
Okay. I was going to say, maybe for like 1981, maybe, but not 1989. But no, this is pretty solid. And I'm with you. Like, that Scott Hall spot that they edited when he just pushed Sid and Sid kind of probably slipped and fell backwards. Scott essentially does the exact same thing.
Right.
And they let him eat it and they show it. It's definitely weird. I don't know why you'd want any of your guys that you're pushing to look vulnerable like that. I would edit it out myself. But
well, I have heard Jim Ross in the past complain about. I've heard Jim Ross complain in the past sometimes about the laziness in production when they have like only a day or two to get something done. Which again, this was taped on the 14th, aired on the 16th. So there was a lot. I think it was Tony, not Jim Ross. I think Tony Schiavone would complain about the lack of editing on the shows at times.
Yeah. I think they blamed it on the ropes being slick or something like that. So obviously it's good that you have Jim Ross and Jim Cornette on commentary. They kind of cover up for it and explain it away to where you don't really think much of it. But yeah, it's a tape show. Stuff like that should be edited.
So this is a good one here. It's promo time. Jim Ross with the Steiner brothers and Robin Green. Ross wants to question Scott about the finish at the Clash. Scott says he saw nothing in the footage, so he doesn't know if he was tripped. Really, Scott, you don't know if somebody grabbed your foot or not? Scott says in all sports, everybody trips. Everybody falls. The Freebirds can count their blessings this time. And then as Scotty looks into the camera, a woman starts listening on really interestingly. She was very curious what Scott was going to say next. And Scott says he'll make one promise. He will never, and then he looks directly in a woman's face and says, ever trip again. So Scott knows what's up here. And he just won't say anything because his brother's in love. So Scott, maybe he knows what's going on, and for his brother's sake, he's just being a good bro, I guess, or at least that's what he thinks he's doing. Well played by Scott Steiner, though. I thought he sold this really well. He gets a bad rap for his promos, and rightfully so. But at the very least, maybe he can't really get everything over verbally, but he gets it. He understands what he needs to be selling here. And looking at woman when saying, I will never, ever trip again, perfect for what's going on here.
I just think he starts talking too fast and kind of loses his train of thought. That's kind of like one of the big faults that he has. But he knows what to say. It's just getting him to say it the way he needs to. Solid promo, and definitely I like to look to the woman. He clearly knows. He's been on that side of she's a bad news from the get-go, because he's kind of been saying, as long as Rick's happy, I'm happy. That's all that matters. And this just plays into that perfectly. So I think he did a good job there with it as well.
Highlights of the suffocation angle once more, because we just haven't seen it enough. Keep those calls coming in to Turner, everyone. Promo time from Terry Funk, who's rocking a sling, along with Gary Hart. Jim Ross has a telegram to Terry Funk from Jim Herd.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have relived that near tragedy once again. And if you'll all bear with me, I'd like to read everyone, especially Mr. Funk, Mr. Hart, this telegram that I received before we went on the air from Jim Herd. Please listen. Since the purchase of World Championship Wrestling by Turner Broadcasting Systems, the executives in charge of World Championship Wrestling and TBS have been aware that rivalries and feuds are a part of professional wrestling and have exercised leniency in letting the individuals involved settle their own affairs. However, the actions taken by Terry Funk go far beyond the guidelines of the sport, beyond the standards we demand of our wrestlers. We are interested in providing exciting wrestling for all of our fans, but Terry Funk's attack will not be tolerated. Terry Funk is hereby suspended indefinitely from wrestling in the National Wrestling Alliance and will not compete in any event under our auspices. It is signed Jim Herd, Executive Vice President, World Championship Wrestling.
How long am I suspended for?
Indefinitely.
How does this Herd or this idiot have the right to suspend me? He can't suspend me. Why doesn't he suspend Ric Flair?
Look,
for what? I'll show you what for.
This is a legal document. He's suspended as of right now.
He is not only suspended, they are asking for $100,000 fine. Do you think for 1 second, Herd, that we are going to take this laying down? Do you think that we are not going to institute some kind of litigation? Do you think that you are going to protect Ricky Flair's annex by destroying this man's elbow? Show you something. Am I supposed to go ahead and sit there and take that? Look at my arm. What about Flair? Get a close-up of that. What about when he repeatedly beat me in the arm with the branding iron? Look at that. And now you expect me to apologize and pay $100,000 fine? No way.
And we learned that Terry Funk is getting fined $100,000. A little bit ridiculous. That's like $200,000 in today's money, Steve, which is almost $250,000. I mean, he did try to suffocate him. He successfully suffocated him because Brian Pillman brought Ric Flair back to life. Maybe that's why Pillman's getting booked like this. Nevertheless, not only is Funk fined $100,000, he is indefinitely suspended from the NWA. And I started wondering, why is Jim Ross relating this on television in a telegram? Isn't this more like, shouldn't this be like done in an office somewhere by someone higher up than Jim Ross, the commentator? Terry Funk becomes enraged. He takes the sling off. He shows the staph infection injury on his elbow. He wants to know why Ric Flair wasn't suspended for that. Ric Flair did that to him. Is Terry Funk supposed to sit back and take that? Terry Funk said he'd do it again. And this is where he says, but don't do it at home, kids. But I'd do it again if I had to. So Terry Funk is fined $100,000. He's suspended indefinitely. Certainly the biggest suspension and fine in wrestling history at this point, I would have to think. And Funker doesn't like it.
This is a pretty solid promo as well. I'm with you, though. Why the hell is Jim Ross delivering this news? I mean, from a common sense standpoint, like, well, he's the host. He can relay a message type deal. But at the same time, you need those figureheads to be able to come out. Jack Tunney showed up every now and then, Jim Herd,
for something like this, yeah, this is definitely a Jack Tunney thing. If this happened, which it wouldn't have happened in the WWF, but had Hulk Hogan been, I bet Hulk's mad he didn't think of this first. But had he been suffocated, yes, this is a Jack Tunney manner, no doubt.
Yeah, so it just adds the emphasis. Oh, damn, Jack Tunney's coming on TV, so something big did happen. It just the visual and the cosmetics of it all just doesn't make it seem as effective, if you ask me.
We see highlights from the New Zealand militia taking out the Dynamic Dudes, or at least Johnny Ace, the canteen to the fractured cheekbone, taped all the way back on August 1st. But the dudes are back, and they're in the ring, taking on Joe Cruz and Agent Steel, and the wipeout on Agent Steel gets the win, only 2 minutes and 6 seconds. My notes here: crap double teams, awful timing. Ace rushes to pull the top rope down so that Shane can do a dive. That was a tag team spot here. I get that they were trying, but it looked like shit. As Johnny Ace basically runs over and tries to yank the top rope down, which already looks shitty that Shane can't even clear the top rope. He needs a guy to hold the rope down for him, but I don't know. I didn't like it. I know you said you thought they improved throughout these shows. I didn't see it here.
Not in this one. I think when they was able to work, I think the militia, I thought it wasn't that bad. Again, it's the Dynamic Dudes curve. It's not. I'm not comparing them to the Rockers or the Hearts, Brainbusters, those types. But
right.
A little time off did help them a little bit, I thought. And just having that confidence by having Cornette out there with you, I'm sure that helped a little bit after a little bit of time, of course. Yeah, it's nothing to write home about. This match was really a nothing match.
Promo time with the Dynamic Dudes and Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette has become the Dudes' advisor. And what kept the Midnight Express on top for 6 years is that they do everything well, says Jim Cornette. And he's here once the current teams have their day, like his Midnights, the Dudes will be next in line. Jim Cornette ponders 2 years, 3 years? Fuck that. If it takes me 3 years to get good enough to be a champion, a tag team champion, I don't want to be in that tag team, Steve. And Jim Cornette says he has faith in the Dudes, and they'll be on top one day, and he's happy to help them get there. Not as their manager, but as their advisor. And again, I write, what the fuck is the difference?
There is none.
And it's more Cornette time for TV because he advises the Dudes. He cuts a promo with the Dudes, and now he's right back out here managing the Midnight Express. Over Bill Ford and Robbie Idol, the Veg-O-Matic on Ford gets the win, 3 minutes, 35 seconds. And the Z-Man makes his first center stage appearance with a win over Mike Awesome. And I wrote, what the fuck was this theme? I don't know. I'm sure you can't remember it in your head, but it doesn't sound like a wrestling theme, an entrance theme for anyone, much less someone like the Z-Man here. It was almost like that first theme that Shawn Michaels had when he turned heel. It wasn't quite that good. Not that that was good, but it was bad. It was bad. It really didn't reflect the Z-Man character. It didn't sound like a baby face. It was just slow and boring. I don't know who picked it. It was terrible. That's all I got.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I don't even really remember listening to it, to be honest with you. I can't even recall what it sounds like.
So we saw him at the Clash. We're seeing him here for a second time. No mask, nothing hiding his face, but the announcers, even Mr. Jim Cornette, who knows everything, still not acknowledging that he's Tom Zink. They have no idea who this guy is. I guess you could say he's a mystery. Get it, Steve?
You say so.
Yeah,
I get it.
I put a bunch of Z's in there, Steve. Come on, work with me. Pile driver.
I'm working.
A pile driver in the middle of the match. A random move. A pile driver. Tom Zink on Mike Awesome felt really odd. Yet he finishes him with the sleeper. I wrote lame. 1 minute, 41 seconds. Not exactly the Z-Man of a year later even, or maybe even a few months after this. He's more slow and just, I don't know, man. It's something about him right now. It's not clicking for me. And he's going out there and just doing random moves. Like, who does a pile driver as a transition move and then goes into a sleeper for the finish?
Yeah, 1989, that's not how you work. The pile driver is a finisher. Obviously, now you can do pile driver as a transition move in companies outside of WWE, but
sure,
it's definitely awkward to see. Man, he brings nothing to the table for me right now. He's done nothing. He's very boring. You get a big push. Z-Man is coming. You're on all the chyrons in and out of matches and going into commercial. You're all over the place. Who the hell is this Z-Man? And then you come out and you start finishing people with the damn sleeper hold. And it's like, Come on, dude. You got to be better than that.
And we know he can do more. We've seen him do more. He's more athletic than what we're seeing here. It's just, I don't think he understands what the hell he needs to do.
I just don't think he really cares. I don't know. Like,
I wouldn't care either. I just saw the Iron Sheik get fucking, whatever, $100,000 for doing nothing. So, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
These guaranteed contracts here with Turner. That's what, what did it in for some of these guys.
I'm not doing shit.
Yeah, there's no incentives anymore.
WWF, That
right.
WWF. I know it's a little probably worn off. It's been 2 years, but still, I mean, he's in WWF land.
Well, to be fair, the Can-Ams weren't, they were pretty solid. They were more active. There were certainly no rockers, but they were in that mold of faster paced style.
Yeah, I can't. It's definitely awkward. This is not what you'd want out of a debuting act. I'll tell you that.
And we move on to the Danger Zone. It's the final Danger Zone, as this is the end of Paul E. Dangerously. Paul E. says this is going to be the year of Living Dangerously and the Dangerous Alliance. So he's name-dropping every idea he ever came up with years before he uses them. Paul E. says he's not through. He's alive and well. He's got just the right way to get things done. And that must be getting fired. That's all I can come up with there. Because he's gone. That's it. That's the end of Paulie Dangerously, at least the Danger Zone. We do have that manager match coming up next week, but that's it, where he's managing the militia. Highlights of the SST leaving Paul E. are shown from the Clash just as a way to shit on him on the way out, to show that he was fired by the SST and he's basically worthless here, is the way he's sold. Announcer Rhubarb Jones has been announced Billboard's. Let me make sure I don't mess this up. Billboard's large market country music DJ of the year, Steve. And that's as silly as it sounds and as long as it is. That's actually a pretty big honor to be named the, large market are all the big cities around the entire United States. Chicago, Detroit, New York, Dallas, anywhere you can think of. And he's the number one country DJ. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Jim Ross hypes it up all the damn time. So if you didn't know now, you definitely would. I mean, if you didn't know, you would know.
Right. So, he's a great ring announcer here.
I think so too. I love Rhubarb Jones. He has a great voice. He's to the point. He doesn't do stupid shit to try to get himself over. He does his job and he does it really well. And kudos to Turner for paying for him. I'm sure he costs a decent amount of money.
It's Wildfire Tommy Rich in the ring, so you already know this is going to be a hell of a match. He's taking on the returning Captain Redneck Dick Murdoch. And welcome back, baby, Dickie Murdoch back in the ring, if you will. Dueling arm bars. Anything you can do, I can do better, says Dick Murdoch. Tommy Rich applies his arm bar. Dick Murdoch, he's been around the block too, Steve. He puts in his own arm bars, so it's a dueling arm bars match. What a fantastic encounter.
Jesus. Who are you talking to with that?
This is one of those matches where Murdoch just came to have some fun, because I had to laugh at his selling, the way he crumpled up in the corner, the way he slid down the turnbuckles one at a time as he bumped into the corner. He gets down on his side and walks around in a circle, does the curly shuffle, sells an atomic drop better than Rick Rude in this match. I mean, just Dick Murdoch came to have fun is all I could put down here. And the Tommy Rich tries to get a finish, a win with the atomic drop. And I don't mean he went for a cover. I mean, this was the high spot of the match, Steve. Tommy Rich with the atomic drop, but only gets a 2 count as Dick Murdoch gets his foot on the ropes from an atomic drop. Jesus, Tommy. Do something this side of 1983, man.
Oh, man. This was a snooze fest. I get what you're saying with Dick Murdoch, but, man, I can't get into Tommy Rich. I don't know why they keep doing this. The main event match with Ron Simmons going 15 minutes. This match going 15 minutes. If anything, this just exposes how stuck in 1983 Tommy Rich really is. And, oh, Lord. To have a 15-minute match and only like 6 bullet points for your for your notes, that tells you all you need to know about what this match consisted of.
I'm sure Dusty was smiling down from heaven when I was watching this, because they trade some elbows, baby, back and forth, the elbows, baby, getting funky like a monkey. Tommy Rich applies the figure 4. Do some moves of your own. I couldn't believe he put literally the world champion's finisher. Tommy Rich is here using it. Ric Flair must have still been pissed off at Paul Lee and in the back cussing the wall or something not to see this and go after Rich as well. Rich tries it again, but Dick Murdoch with a inside cradle. Dick Murdoch elbow pops Rich, knocks him to the floor. They start trading blows on the outside, and the two get back in the ring. They start trading blows, and in 14 minutes and 13 seconds, we get a 15-minute draw. Jim Cornette is wrong on this time because they shaved it. Jim Cornette says something like, there's still 45 seconds left in the match, and 2 seconds later, the bell rings, and they announce the draw, and Cornette has to eat his words, says he was counting wrong, so he had to cover himself there. And as the match concludes, Rich and Murdoch shake hands for basically doing nothing.
Yeah, they did absolutely nothing for 14 minutes and got paid for it. Congratulations, guys.
How the hell do you draw with a guy who isn't even in full time, being Murdoch, yet you're in the middle of this feud or house show loop working the United States champion Lex Luger? You can't even get a win against Dick Murdoch, who just popped back up for a few shows on TV, yet you're in the middle of working with Lex Luger, which is prominent here because they actually show highlights from the Clash with Luger pinning Tommy Rich, and then we get a Tommy Rich promo where he thanks God for the fans, and he wants to talk to, I'm going to talk to Flex Luger. I'm sorry, Luger. He's not clever enough to call him Flex Luger. And Tommy says he's not done with Lex Luger yet. Blah. And you didn't even beat Dick Murdoch, and you're still calling out Lex Luger. I don't know about that.
I'm not buying what you're selling there, Tommy Rich. And the sooner you're gone, which I know it's not anytime soon, so we're stuck with him at least through this year, the rest of this year. But yeah, garbage. It's not even trash. It's the whole damn garbage.
Wow. Wow.
I'm not knocking Tommy Rich, but
no, and I'm not either. I'm not either, man. But
it's just
you gotta compartmentalize some of these guys' careers. It's like when we get to Monday Warfare and Chris Jericho's in his prime and as a heel, I'm gonna praise him in WCW. But if we were covering anything from like the last 5 years, Chris Jericho, I'm gonna shit all over it. So I mean,
exactly. So I mean, like we bag on Lex Luger on Nitro,
yes,
but here he's tremendous. So I mean, it's no knock on him. But in 1989, when you have guys in here like this match is followed up by Flying Brian versus Bob Cook,
right?
So when you see guys like Flying Brian and the SkyScrapers and the Steiner brothers who are kind of ushering in a new era of in-ring performers, for at least for TV and things like that. Obviously, this stuff's probably been going on for quite a long time elsewhere, but they're ushering in a new style and that fast pace. Even the Midnight's still doing it, and you stick out like a sore thumb if you're gonna work arm bars and headlocks for 4 minutes and then do a Thez press. Like that looks terrible. When you got Brian Pillman doing sling blades in 1989,
right?
And Air Pillman and drop kicks from the floor to a dude sitting on the top rope. I mean, it's night and day difference, and your whole card's covered in this.
Yeah.
And there's Tommy Rich. It's that sore thumb, and again, no knock on him. I'm sure this stuff worked in 1981, 83. There's a reason he got the belt. He got over. People loved him. Missy Hyatt loved him. That's what drew her into wrestling. So, it is what it is, but in 1989, it just wasn't working, and he's very boring.
The show moves on. We get highlights of the Eddie Gilbert Flying Brian match from World Championship Wrestling, where Pillman got the pin with Gilbert's foot underneath the ropes last week. As we go back to the ring for the match you mentioned, it's Flying Brian taking on Bob Cook, but first, before the match can get started, it's Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert into the ring in street clothes. And he calls Brian Pillman one of the greatest young athletes in the business. But Eddie is not happy with the finish from last week. He knows Pillman felt good after that big win. But if Pillman is half the man that Eddie already knows he is, Gilbert wants a rematch, a return match for next week. And Brian Pillman obviously accepts that, so they book their own TV main event for next week, Steve. I guess you can just do that, even back here in 1989. And Brian Pillman, as the match gets going, hits some fun stuff early, kicks Cook right in the mouth, slows it down a little bit with some rest holds to stretch out the match just a little bit, and a flying body block. Brian Pillman gets the win over Cook in 4.5 minutes. What did you think of Gilbert escalating this story with Brian Pillman, taking a week off of World Championship Wrestling, in the ring, I mean, against each other, instead of just doing back-to-back weeks? Kind of slow build, if you want to call it that, just to separate things a little bit. You can see the bookings a little bit different now.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought this was very well done. It's kind of a precursor to what, you see on TV in the 90s, things like that, to where you do an angle on one show, or even just an interview like this was. And it just leads to the next show. It makes you tune in, because sometimes, like, what happens on Saturday night doesn't necessarily make you want to watch Saturday night again. It's the storylines as a whole. Whereas you can have these little TV angles where, okay, this happens on Saturday night, it gets finished on the next week's Saturday night. That sort of build. You didn't get that very often back then on any show, really. It was just to progress to the next show in line. But I thought this was very well done. I mean, it gives you have emphasis on a main event for the next week, which it seems like that's what Ric Flair had in mind as far as TV main events go. It makes you want to watch it. I want to see this match because, okay, Eddie has every right to be upset that his foot was under the ropes and he lost. The only problem I have with this whole thing is it's like that match that happened on syndication doesn't even exist in this world. Right. They don't even acknowledge it at all. The count out from Worldwide, I think it was.
Yeah.
So that's the only problem I have with it. I don't recall them ever mentioning that. So things on syndication just don't matter, and that's a problem. But other than that, yeah, I really like this.
We follow that matchup with a promo by U.S. champion Lex Luger, and it's back to pre-tapes for Luger. He was in center stage last time. It was nice seeing him there, but it's back to pre-tapes this week anyway, as the total package says he now has it all. He's so far above everyone now because he has the wrestling experience on top of everything else he already had. He disposed of Tommy Rich. Somebody should tell Tommy that. He's not aware of that. And Lex wants to know where the real competition is. I like this line here. Luger says the U.S. title is number one. It's the number one title, not because of the belt, but because of the man who holds it. Great line there by Lex Luger. And he wants to know, where are the challengers? Where's Sting? Where's Ric Flair? Where are you? Beat him up one time. Shut him up. Luger moving on from Tommy Rich, whether Tommy knows it or not. I like that. And I like a couple of the lines he had here. He's calling the big names out by name. Pretty cool stuff by the total package.
Yeah, I think it's one of the first promos like this, so you're going to hear it quite a bit going forward for at least a couple weeks.
Yeah,
but yeah, I really feel like this is a really good promo. And from reading his book, I'm not going to get into it, but it doesn't seem like he cared about holding titles. It wasn't on his agenda. He just wanted the money, and that was it. So him saying that the belt is just the belt. It's right. Number one because I'm holding it, not because of the belt. And that screams Lex Luger more than anything. So
I think he was the first wrestler with an agent that came in to write up his contract. I think he was the first wrestler with a guaranteed contract. So I mean, he did a lot.
There,
it's a lot of firsts.
He called Crockett's bluff. He said, well, I got to get my lawyers to look at this. He didn't even have a lawyer. He made it up. He's like, I'll get back to you in a week. And he actually, I think he probably did go talk to a lawyer after that, but he didn't have one going into it. And right. He came back, and I think he got $850,000. And Crockett's like, well, if that's what you want, got it. Is there anything else you want? He's like, well, how about us and the Horsemen fly first class? It fits the persona, and if they catch us in coach, it doesn't really fit the persona. He's like, hey, good point. You got that too. And he walked out, and that was it. And it kind of pissed everybody off because he got all that guaranteed money. He's only been in the business like 2 years. So he was definitely smart and then ahead of the game. Like, yeah. And he let people know he was
very
smart,
well business oriented beyond wrestling. Wrestling wasn't really, outside of the promoters, it wasn't very business savvy.
I think he even said it's just a means to the end, an end to the means. It was just about making money. He didn't care about anything else, to be honest with you. And you can really tell in these promos.
He cared about himself. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
So this was a new Luger promo. So like you said, you can expect it for the next few weeks because that seems to be Luger's forte at this point. He'll cut a brand new promo. Some of it sounds pretty good, and he'll use all of it for about a month, and then he'll create a new one again. So this is a new one, so be prepared. I'm sure we're going to hear it again. As we go back to the ring, it's the SkyScrapers taking on Luis Astilla and Powerhouse Tim Parker. Teddy Long joins for commentary, calls the Road Warriors the Road Runners. So we're clearly moving into a SkyScrapers Road Warriors feud, which just sounds awesome on paper anyway. Back in the ring.
I can't wait to see some of these.
Yeah. Teddy Long on commentary while these SkyScrapers in the ring double press throw Astilla into his corner so that he can tag out to poor Tim Parker. Sid winds up missing a shoulder charge into the corner on Parker, but Tim pays for it with a clothesline and a whirly bird. Sid getting over and playing to the crowd drops to his knees and the crowd eating it up. Dan Spivey back in, powerbomb on Tim Parker, gets the win, 1 minute, 33 seconds. And the action continues on the show. We saw Scott Steiner earlier in singles competition. This time it's Rick, who's accompanied to the ring by brother Scott and Robin Green. No Missy this week still. And he takes on Tommy Angel. The announcers claim that Missy is missing this episode of World Championship Wrestling because she is distraught due to the outcome of the match at the Clash of the Champions. And I wrote, really? Like, her team lost? So she's so distraught that she can't attend a show? She's never managed someone? I've seen some shit happen to Missy and the people that she's managed over the years. I never saw her distraught and missing shows. But that's the story we're selling here. And Rick Steiner with a release German, a top rope power slam, and a belly to belly for good measure on poor Tommy Angel. Rick picks up the win, 2 minutes, 28 seconds.
She didn't even miss time for getting misted. And,
that is true. She missed less time for being misted twice. She did it twice.
Exactly. Wow. Okay. Makes sense, I guess. But Cornette with the line of the night during this match, it's becoming death-defying to wrestle the Steiners. Wow. So they're not far off. Man, they just destroy guys, and I love watching these guys go, man.
We close the show. It's promo time. A second time with the Steiner brothers. They got Robin Green with them once again. Robin gets to talk this time. She says she doesn't know why everyone's blaming her for the finish at the Clash, but it's okay. The Steiners didn't win this time. She's just a girl from Milwaukee, and she doesn't know why everybody's blaming her, and she lets them off the hook. It's okay that the Steiners lost this time. Rick cuts her off with time running out. It's clear that they're getting the countdown, and Rick cuts her off so he can take over and tell the rest of the story that needs to be told here in the promo. Says the Freebirds may have won, but that's the past. It won't happen again. Rick whispers something to Jim Ross and then says it out loud. Bring the camera guys next week. He's going to ask Robin a big question. Jim wants to know if it's the question. Rick says it is. Jim Ross thinks he and Scott Steiner better have a talk with Rick before next week. Apparently they don't. And Scott says they're still brothers. Nothing will come between them. And eerie words from Scott Steiner as the episode of World Championship Wrestling ends.
Yep. It is what it is, that promo. It felt rushed just because they had time constraints, which kind of stinks. But Robin, as we'll see going forward, she takes a long time to get from point A to point C in her promos. I don't know if she's necessarily ready for this.
I don't think she's promo ready.
Scott,
sometimes they're better than others.
But she is definitely easy on the eyes. And sure. I enjoy watching her talk. Doesn't mean I'm listening.
We move on to the Sunday program, NWA main event for September 17th. Actually, there was no TBS main event for September 17th. There was an Atlanta Braves game. But I managed to find the syndicated version of the show because if everybody remembers, just like the WWF used to have to put out heat, even when it didn't air here in the States, and they still aired it over in the other countries around the world. Here on the NWA main event, it may have not aired on TBS, but they still had to put it out in syndication. And so here it is, the syndicated version. And I got so excited because I thought I found 3 dark matches on one of the Germany catch-up NWA programs. But it turns out they were all 3 matches from this main event. However, I was kind of happy I still had them because the quality on the Germany version, way better than this. Was very hard to get through the syndicated version because of the video quality. But it was still cool to have, and I'm happy that we have it. The matches were taped back on September 11th. Greenwood, South Carolina. Of course, here, like I said, this is the main event for September 17th. And Paulie Dangerously's technically gone, but he's here with Lance Russell for this one. Paulie says he's retired at 24 years old. Totally contradicts his promo on the Danger Zone where he says he's going to find new talent or whatever the hell it was that he said there. We kick things off. State Patrol in the ring against Lee Scott and Agent Steel. Lance thinks Lee Scott is a fine wrestler. The Patrol get heat on Agent Steel, but he gets the hot tag to Lee Scott. It's always great to be able to say that sentence. Hot tag to Lee Scott. But, alas, it's the State Patrol getting the win using their suplex, top rope, shoulder block combo move on Lee Scott. State Patrol pick up the win, 8 minutes, 32 seconds. And then, I don't even know if they show it. I didn't see it, but the announcers mention it, and I think Pedicino even mentions it during his little segment here. The State Patrol apparently now write tickets and pin them on their opponents after they beat them. So, cool little gimmick. I do remember them doing that. I didn't see them do it here, but the announcers say as much during the instant replay. We get a Brian Pillman promo. He references Eddie Gilbert as a stepping stone, which I thought was a kind of a heel thing to do. I don't think he meant it, but it was still odd that he referenced Eddie Gilbert as a stepping stone. Not a very babyface thing to say, but he says he's there for Sting and Flair too. Not only is he looking to further his own career, he's looking to help out his new friends, Ric Flair and Sting. Paulie Dangerously, during the next segment, claims he is no longer a manager. He's a full-time announcer now. Again, contradicts the Danger Zone. I don't really know what's going on here. I guess it doesn't really matter because he's fired. It's over to Pedicino Knows. He puts over the State Patrol, of all things, and talks about the fallout from the Clash before it's back to the ring with the Dynamic Dudes taking on Randy Rhoads and Cuban Assassin. This is the match we already saw. I think it was on Worldwide. I'm not really sure, but basically what happens here is it's the wipeout on Randy Rhoads, fold him in half, 2.5 minutes, and the Dudes pick up the win. Clash highlights again. Same 4 matches that they showed all weekend, and then back to a promo. Gary Hart and Dick Slater talking about the suffocation angle, as they mentioned as such. Hart talks suffocating Ric Flair, says Terry Funk was deranged. It's not Gary and Dick's fault that Terry Funk is deranged. Slater says an eye for an eye. So even though Gary Hart tries to play it off like they had nothing to do with it, Dick Slater then goes on to say an eye for an eye, basically making it okay. So there, once again, another contradictory promo from Gary Hart and Dick Slater. And we go to the ring for a really, really solid TV match. I had a lot of fun watching this one. Great bumping, by the way, here by Bobby Eaton. As Bobby Eaton's led to the ring by Jim Cornette in a singles match to take on Dick Slater, accompanied by Gary Hart. Good stuff. And a very fun finishing sequence. Slater starts using a punching combo, and more great bumping and selling by Bobby Eaton as he slides down, slinkers down the corner turnbuckles. Gary Hart teases interfering. Jim Cornette comes over and grabs Gary Hart to stop him. Bobby Eaton in the ring with a cradle, but referee Nick Patrick is too busy admonishing the managers. So Slater winds up kicking out. Bobby Eaton back up, comes back with some punches of his own, lands the swinging neckbreaker, and for the first time in forever, Alabama Jam. Flying leg drop off the top rope. 1, 2, but they're by the ropes, and Gary Hart pulls Bobby Eaton off of Dick Slater and pulls him out to the apron. Pisses Eaton off, so Eaton grabs Gary Hart, holds him there. Jim Cornette runs around. Wham! Cornette cracks the tennis racket across the back of Gary Hart, forcing him to sell. Meanwhile, as the referee's busy with the managers again, it's Dick Slater nailing Bobby Eaton with the cast to pick up the win. 9 minutes, 52 seconds. Eaton bumped beautifully. See what I did there, Steve? And when Bobby took that cast shot, he fell down like he was legitimately knocked out. Actually landed throat first across the bottom rope unintentionally, but still sold it. And just an amazing, nasty bump by Bobby Eaton as he crumpled down. Dick Slater picks up the win, and Paulie says he knocked him out with one punch, which was true, but it was with a cast. Really, really solid match.
Sounds awesome. I need to check it out.
And we close the show with another Brian Pillman promo. This time he's with the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Pillman took out Norman. Now it's on to bigger things. How do you get much bigger than Norman? Ric Flair talks to the JTEX Corporation. If it takes a year, Ric Flair, Sting, Pillman, Flair even name drops the Roadies. Says whoever he needs to team up with, they will eliminate JTEX. And I wrote down here, man, what a 10-man tag it would have been if they kept all these guys around, did this. I'm fantasy booking here for a minute, Steve. Ric Flair, Sting, Brian Pillman, the Road Warriors. And then on the other side, you have Terry Funk, Muda, Dick Slater, or Buzz Sawyer, Arn Anderson. Man, it could have been something.
That would have been a hell of a War Games. That would have been excellent.
We move on to the next week. It's going to be a lot of replays and more replays on some of these matches here. So hopefully the show moves along a little quicker at this point. NWA Power Hour for September 22nd. It's that match we were talking about before. It's the New Fantastics. I'm just calling them the Fulton Brothers because that's what it is. It's Bobby and Jackie Fulton taking on World Tag Team Champions, the Freebirds. I asked before, how do they get this world title shot in their debut match? It's a generic Fantastics intro. Did you catch this, Steve? Do you remember how we talked before about when the Fantastics were here and their ring introduction, their theme music had a ring introduction fused into the actual theme music? Well, Jackie and Bobby Fulton have the same thing here with a different ring announcer, and it's as B-rated as their tag team.
Yeah, I remember that, and it brought back some memories. I don't think I heard it the first time they came out, but the second time he came out, I was like, oh, that's that guest ring announcer type gimmick that they had when the Fantastics were here at the beginning of the year. So I enjoyed it for sure. I loved that. I thought it was definitely unique and different for those guys.
Yeah, but here it's a generic version with a new ring announcer, and I thought it sounded like shit. And you know what the sad part of the whole thing is? Who's standing in the ring during this match? Gary Michael Capetta. You tell me, who would you rather have introduce you to the ring? Just ridiculous Bobby Fulton trying to live off of what he had before.
Gary Michael Capetta all day.
Oh, yes. I wrote here, though, decent double teaming by the Fantastics, the Fultons. A little sloppy, but Jackie's okay for a rookie, which he is legitimately a rookie. Hasn't been in the ring for a year yet. Clearly getting this shot because of his brother. Jackie, though, misses a missile dropkick. The Freebirds with a double spine buster on Jackie Fulton, and it's not as cool as it sounds. The Birds wind up getting heat on Jackie, but he makes the hot tag to the elder brother, Bobby. Bobby Fulton comes in and applies an abdominal stretch to Michael Hayes. But Jimmy Garvin sneaks in DDT on Bobby Fulton. Birds get the win in 5 minutes and 20 seconds. And I thought it was kind of cool, big brother Bobby throwing himself under the bus, doing the job here for the Birds instead of having his rookie brother do it.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool spot out of that abdominal stretch there. Him coming over and grabbing him in the DDT is pretty cool. But other than that, really not a lot going on here. I didn't think the Fultons looked bad, but definitely no Tommy Rogers.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yeah, Jackie is green as shit. So their time here was quick in the NWA after they figured it out. When you go to the length of naming them the fucking New Fantastics rather than the Fulton Brothers, I think that's where your issues start. I would use them as the Fultons or some other new name. Don't shit on the name of the Fantastics just for the cheap pop. He's not ready here.
Whose call do you think that was? You think it was Bobby? Or
I would have to imagine. Bobby, yeah, I think all day long.
Makes sense.
It's time, once again, Gordon Soley's WNN. He talks Funk's suspension, but he's not suspended from talking. What the fuck kind of sense does that make, Steve? This guy suffocated a man on TV. He's been fined $100,000. He's been indefinitely suspended, but we learned that he's only suspended from wrestling. It's okay if he does anything else he wants to do on the show. So Funk's Grill, that's still okay.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, a player gets ejected from the game, he has to go to the back. You know, he just can't hang out at the sidelines and cheer his team on. You're gone. You go to the showers. So if you're going to suspend somebody
for murder, attempted murder.
Yeah, attempted murder. So you're telling me I don't wrestle anymore? I can just come out here and shoot the shit and talk for 5 minutes and leave and get paid for it? Sign me up. I'm not even like suspended without pay. I'm just suspended from wrestling because they're afraid you're going to murder somebody else. Like, ridiculous.
So as I mentioned, the SST have disappeared, but Gordon said they will be back soon, and they will. We also learned that new NWA TV champion, the Great Muta, was named the Pro Athlete of the Week by Japan Press. Really? Pro Athlete of the Week? That's a big story there. Robin Green showed her true colors at the Clash. And tomorrow on World Championship Wrestling, we'll see what Gordon is talking about. So Gordon alludes to something happening this weekend. We just don't know what yet. And it's time. Weekly top 10 rankings. And then at number 10, the Z-Man has cracked the list. Replaces Ron Simmons there. 9 is Norman. 8, Dr. Death. 7, Sid. 6, Dan Spivey. 5, Tommy Rich. Really? How? 4, Flying Brian. Good to see him soaring to the top. See what I did there? 3, Sting. 2, Muda. Number 1, he says he's number 1. It's the total package, Lex Luger. And of course, Ric Flair, your world champion. And the reason some of those guys, their names have went up is because there's no longer Terry Funk on the rankings. So at least they were smart enough to remove him from the rankings. I was going to say maybe you don't lose your ranking either when you're indefinitely suspended, but apparently you do.
I'm interested to see. I mean, I don't really care because they don't care about the top 10, but I'm interested to see if he gets right back into his slot once this whole thing shakes out.
Yeah, we go back to the ring, and it's good to see Ranger Ross survive the Sid Vicious murder from the Clash as he takes on Scrap Iron Bill Ford here. Good athletics by Ranger Ross, up and over into a back roll and a combat kick. Nice spot there. 3 minutes, 27 seconds. Ranger Ross picks up the win. Weird seeing him out here doing this right after the Sid spot. It felt like I knew Ranger's still stuck around, but it felt like that was basically the end of his push. Like we weren't going to be seeing Ranger Ross win any more matches.
They have no idea what they want to do with this guy week to week. I mean, he comes and goes. You hardly see him. Then he pops up. He gets killed by Sid, and then he's gone for a couple weeks. And then here he is again, getting wins against jobbers as if we should care about him. So nobody's going to get over. Nobody's going to be memorable when you're doing stupid stuff like this. Like the ding dongs get trashed, but I think we've seen them 3 times on TV.
Yeah.
How can you? You're basically saying they're garbage based, and they are. I mean, I'm not going to defend the gimmick, but when you're only basically seen for Clash 7 and that's it, like how's that fair to say you get one shot at it and that's it? Like it's hard to do anything. I mean, that's all you're working, you know. I'm sure they're working the house shows, but we don't see that, and that's no way to get somebody over. So just, I don't know, man. It makes no sense.
It's time for Funk's Grill because remember, he can talk. He's not suspended from speaking. Funk's Grill's guest this week, his manager, Gary Hart. Terry said he's been suspended from wrestling, his livelihood taken away by nerd Jim Herd. So Terry can't wrestle, but he won't apologize. He will not. He will rot in hell first. But kids, don't do it. But fuck Ric Flair. So Funk wants the title, but he has to wrestle in order to get the title. So once again, Funk basically saying he doesn't apologize. He doesn't care that he basically attempted to kill Ric Flair. He would do it again. But kids, don't try this at home.
He showed his stitches and everything from his elbow, and man, that was brutal looking. Woo.
Yeah.
Pretty nasty visual, and it really tells you like what he's going through. It's legit. So pretty nasty looking.
We go to the ring for a doozy. I thought this was kind of interesting on paper. It's Rick Steiner accompanied by girlfriend for today, Robin Green. Still no Missy. Missy's still gone. Taking on Norman the Lunatic with Teddy Long. So this is quite a match here. Jim Ross says Robin Green has one of the greatest followings, meaning her rear. And Cornette comes up with, and what precedes her ain't bad either, meaning the other side. So they're having fun on commentary here, talking about Robin Green once more.
I'm shocked.
And it goes on because they talk about Rick being the dog-faced gremlin. Jim Cornette says Norman is part pointer because a part of him is pointing at Robin Green right now. Wow.
It's so stupid. It's funny. That's good.
Norman becomes infatuated. Yeah. They were having fun with this one throughout the match. Norman is infatuated with Robin, and she flirts back. Teddy Long yells at Norman to stay focused on Rick Steiner, and Rick Steiner busts out 2 big giant body slams in a row and starts biting Norman and crawls around ringside, chasing him like a dog. I thought these two were made for each other. The Norman character, the Rick Steiner character. Very fun stuff here. As Norman comes back with not 1, but 2 avalanche splashes in the corner, 2 Karachi crunches. He tries for a 3rd one, but runs right into a Steiner line. Nice spot there as Norman still manages to take over. Rick no-sells some turn, but this was a good one too, Steve. I don't know if you marked this down, but Norman rams Rick Steiner into the turnbuckles. Rick no-sells it and starts ramming himself into the turnbuckle. So Norman decides he's going to do the same thing. Norman walks over to another turnbuckle and starts ramming his own head into the turnbuckle, but at the end, he takes a bump. He sells. It hurt. And I had to laugh. Just Norman's made for this comedy gimmick anyway. We go to the finish as Rick tries a sunset flip, but Norman gives him a trip to the Batcave, drops down, balls to Rick Steiner's face, but Robin Green up on the apron to distract. Norman gets up and comes over. Teddy Long pops up there too to tell Norman to focus, but it's too late. Rick Steiner from behind with a release German suplex on Norman. Holy shit. And Rick Steiner picks up the win in 8 minutes.
Yeah, that release German was awesome. There's some funny spots here as well. Other ones, Rick ends up with the key in his hand and he starts controlling Norman with it and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, I'm with you, man. These two were perfect for each other. Very entertaining match. Steiner's throwing this dude around like he's Lee Scott. They just work great together. It was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I like the comedy spots mixed in there.
Norman, if you get past the gimmick with Norman, he has some pretty entertaining matches with Pillman and Steiner here. He can definitely work. It's not the work that's the problem. It's the gimmick. Right. So, yeah, very entertaining.
It's more highlights from Clash 8, and we go to the end of the program. Wrestler of the Week, according to Klondike Bill, this week is Dr. Death, and Doc doesn't even get an image. So maybe they're phasing out the Wrestler of the Week. I don't really know what's going on. Pretty ho-hum exit here to Power Hour as poor Doc doesn't even get an image here. And we move into the next night, or the next morning, NWA Pro for September 23rd, taping again from Greenwood, South Carolina. I know that because Gary Michael Capetta still in the ring. Gotta love that. Match number 1 sees Ron Simmons take on Greg Evans, the former Ding Dong. Voiceover again this week from Lance Russell talking about the localized card. Solid power moves in the ring by Ron Simmons. He hits an Arn Anderson-style spine buster. Evans tries a leapfrog, which Ron then hits a Ron Simmons-style spine buster. So Evans gets it both ways as Ron picks up the win. 3.5 minutes. We get Clash highlights. In fact, more than highlights is the Z-Man over the Cuban and the Sleeper from the Clash. So they're getting really lazy here. They're actually showing matches from Clash of the Champions this week. Then we see the last few minutes of the Lex Luger-Tommy Rich match from the Clash, which Luger also wins. Over to Pedicino Knows, talking about that upcoming Worcester Mass show coming up in the next few days. Terry Funk and Ric Flair promos once more, but Funk is suspended. So how does this match air? How does this match happen, is what I should say. How can you be promoting matches with Terry Funk when he's suspended? And so I wondered, did he not wrestle? And so I went online and I looked up results, and sure enough, Terry Funk wrestled every night. So very interesting. Apparently he was indefinitely suspended, but only from TV and only from wrestling.
Makes all the sense in the world, don't it? Well, at least you'd have the internet back in the day to go in and look. Did Funk wrestle? I wonder if he wrestled the house show circuit.
No, but if he was coming to my city, I would be wondering if he's going or how he's there. Yeah, it would be confusing, certainly.
Absolutely. I agree with you there.
Bob Caudle interviews Ric Flair and Flying Brian. Pillman is all over these Ric Flair promos lately, clearly getting a big push by the Nature Boy. Pillman is there for Flair if he needs him. A lot of former football players come into the sport not knowing what it is. Only the best survive, like a Wahoo McDaniel or Flying Brian, says the Nature Boy. Ric Flair name drops Sting, Pillman, and the Roadies once again as a group. And I just thought, man, what a group. No rules going forward, says Ric Flair in his feud with Terry Funk. Everything will be no holds barred, even though Terry Funk's suspended. Which, again, whatever. And it's back to the Clash and the Freebirds and the Steiners match, in which the Freebirds win after Scotty is tripped up. Which takes us to the next edition of Pedicino Knows, which features a Tommy Rich promo. I knew you had to love that. Somebody say something about Worcester, Mass, brother. So Tommy Rich still working Lex Luger on the loop anyway. So the feud is over, if you want to call it a feud. I don't know what the hell you call this. But the matches are still going, at least on the house shows. And it's followed up by a Lex Luger promo. And tell me if this makes any sense to you. You defend Lex Luger like crazy. I want to know what the hell this means. Lex Luger says, success breeds contempt, like a malignant tumor. What the fuck does that mean?
Dude, I don't know. It's infectious. So it means infectious of a disease. Very
cancer,
virulent.
Yeah, because benign is not cancerous, right? Right. So, yeah. So, So Lex Luger says, success breeds contempt like cancer. So, well, what the fuck does that mean?
So, it refers to cancer cells that can invade and kill nearby tissue and spread to other parts of your body. So, success breeds contempt. So it's basically spreading. the contempt is spreading throughout the locker room because, or his success is spreading.
Oh, I thought Lex Luger was calling himself a cancer, which have also made sense in 1989.
It all makes sense in the world of Lex Luger, and that's all that matters at this point for him. So, malignant does make sense. It makes it more benign, like you said, is where it's stagnant and not moving. So, it's just spreading from one wrestler to the other. Their contempt for Lex Luger, and that's probably what he's going with there.
So Pro opened with a unique match, the Ron Simmons squash. Then the entire rest of the show has been Clash highlights, and we close with another unique match. It's Sweet Stan Lane with Jim Cornette taking on Michael Hayes with Jimmy Garvin, and Michael Hayes moonwalks, so Stan does his little gigolo dance, and now they're both out of moves for the rest of the match at this point. Karate and such by Stan Lane until he's sent to the floor, and Jimmy Garvin attacks Stan Lane repeatedly throughout the match. Michael Hayes tries to put his feet on the ropes for the pin, but Nick Patrick catches him. So the Freebirds are cheating up a storm all match long. Stan Lane with the O'Connor roll on Michael Hayes, but Garvin nails him from the apron. And Hayes sets up. Lane grabs him for the DDT, hooks him, sets him up, gets ready to go, and Jim Cornette has seen enough interfering. Cornette interferes on his own, slides in the ring, and blasts Michael Hayes right in front of the referee. Tennis racket, boom, to the back of Hayes, and Michael Hayes gets the win by disqualification. 6 minutes.
Yeah, it wasn't a terrible match. I remember messaging you that the two guys that can't really work.
Yes.
I don't want to say they can't work, but they don't want to work.
Right. Yes, that's a good way to put it.
It makes more sense. Bobby Eaton and Jimmy Garvin would have been a lot better here. Yeah, it was okay for who was in the ring.
And I feel like we got a Bobby Eaton Jimmy Garvin match in the last couple weeks before this, so this is like the other half of that. It feels like. Anyway, yeah, it wasn't as bad as it sounds, or it could have been, that's for sure. And I just like Jim Cornette had enough, and the Birds were cheating the entire match. And Jim Cornette, like in real life, he had enough of something, he exploded. And didn't care what the repercussions were going to be, and just blasted Hayes right in front of the ref with the racket. And Hayes picks up the win, but I thought, it wasn't bad.
No, it wasn't.
And we close out the show one more time because we haven't seen enough. It's the suffocation angle to end Pro, and we'll move on to Worldwide for September 23rd. Now, this one was taped in Roanoke, Virginia on September the 18th, and we get a clip at the beginning of the show. It's our first clip as we see Robin Green pull up in a limo to Scott Steiner near a basketball court. We don't see what happens, but we get a little clip here. Jim Ross alludes to a tragic incident involving Scott Steiner that we'll see later in the program. Very huge angle. As the show gets going, we get a quick Jimmy Garvin promo. The Birds got the new Fantastics today. It's a match we've already seen, actually. And the Birds are the greatest tag team in the world today. Yeah, says Jimmy Garvin. I don't know about that. To the ring. It's Dick Slater teaming up with Great Muta. So they're teaming again after Clash of the Champions, taking on Ricky Nelson and Tommy Angel, two of my favorite job guys of the era. As the Clash team reunites, we see the handspring elbow from Muta and Slater with the spike pile driver. This was cool. Muta didn't just climb up to the middle rope. Muta came off the top rope with the spike pile driver spot as Dick Slater drops. I don't know. I think it was Angel. But the heels get the win. 1 minute, 15 seconds. Jim Ross sells a 6-man tag feud, which would involve Funk, Muta, and Slater taking on Sting, Flair, and Pillman. So at this point, this was the plan. Pillman was going to be all up in this.
Sounds good to me. I mean, he fits right in with those two, Sting and heck, I would have been cool with seeing Pillman and Sting as a tag team a little bit as well. That would have been really entertaining. But it's not meant to be. It's not the cards, as they say.
From the pages of the NWA magazine, here's Update. It's Woman and Scott Steiner in this update. And we get the videos, Steve. You ready to run down this video and everything, that your thoughts and whatnot and everything that goes along with this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so we see.
For this episode,
yes, this is huge. This is huge, and this is actually this along with coupled with the suffocation angle, or what leads to some of the notes that I have for the beginning of the next episode of the Grenade. The Turner Brass are not very happy between the suffocation angle and what proceeds to happen here in a moment, as this is taken fairly realistically compared to some of the other stuff we've seen lately anyway. So basically what we have is Scott Steiner's wandering around. He's right outside of outside basketball court somewhere, no idea where. A limo randomly pulls up and Scott thinks Ric's inside. He said, man, Ric's really got it for Robin, thinking that Ric's ordered them a limo to ride around on. He's always wanted to ride in a limo, says Scott Steiner. As Robin pulls up in a limo and rolls down the window, but she announces that she is alone. And Scott says, well, Ric told me to meet him here. And Robin says Ric told her to meet him there as well. Where the hell is Ric at this point? Anyways, Scott Steiner wants to know if there's a TV in the limo. What an odd, random question. And she's just standing there waiting to play basketball. And this is great. Robin says, sure, there's a TV in here. There's booze, too. Like, what is she going to do? Get him drunk? So Scott says he doesn't drink. Somehow I don't buy that. But that's the story here. And Robin agrees to let him in the limo. She rolls up the window, but then she rolls the window back down. How weird. She thanks Scott for telling Ric that Robin didn't trip him at the Clash and that he tripped on his own. Scott assures Robin he will never trip again. Scott is then yanked into the limo, and you can hear a woman repeatedly telling someone to get him, get him, get him repeatedly. You can hear what sounds like a beating going on in the car, and Scott is then dumped out, and you can clearly hear Ron Simmons' voice, Steve.
Yeah, you can definitely pick up.
And I don't think it was intentional. Ron hadn't really talked barely at all on TV, so I don't think it was meant to give anything away. He just happened to be one of the guys in there, and he spoke. And in 2021, that's Ron Simmons. Maybe in 1989, you didn't. I can't say, but the cameraman then conveniently places the camera down on the ground to run for help, and the camera just happens to be facing right where Scott Steiner's laying. As a white gentleman, a small, stocky white gentleman comes out of the car and puts a beating to Scott Steiner as woman tells him, you're not so tough now. So we don't see whoever else is in the limo. We only see the one man who actually gets out and commences to continuing beating on Scott Steiner. But the way the camera is on the ground, very clever here, you can't see the person's head. So we don't know who this is. And you can hear a woman off screen saying, come on, Doom, as they get back in the limo and peel out, leaving Scott Steiner there laying. What'd you think?
I thought it was very well done. I know they kind of rushed to this with woman, but this was excellent. This was very, very realistic. They kind of took it to the streets a little bit, which was nice. You didn't see this very often. Scott he got the shit beat out of him, and he actually sells it really well, and it's kind of nice to see that going forward. They get the makeup on him and things like that, which is different there as well, just because, like Missy and them guys getting, like Trent Knight getting flamed and comes back with a beard, no marks or nothing. So at least they're really selling how bad he got beat up. And I agree with you. I don't think you necessarily knew Ron Simmons' voice out of all the voices in 1989. Clearly we know now, just because we've heard him talk, obviously, a bunch, way more than what we did in 89. So that makes sense. I initially thought the guy that got out looked like Jack Maitre a little bit, but Kevin Sullivan as well. He kind of fits the bill there too. But yeah, I thought this was excellent. It was perfect for what they needed to do. I'm excited for Halloween Havoc just to see these guys make their debut and what they end up with. I know where it goes and who it is, obviously, but I'm excited for Halloween Havoc to see it play out.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. It's funny, by the time we get there, actually anytime after this vignette, we never see another white male involved with Doom. So it kind of goes along with what we read and what we talked about at the beginning of the show, with Kevin Sullivan initially being planned as a member of Doom and then being pulled from the team, or the unit, if you will. As we go back to the ring, U.S. champion Lex Luger taking on Lee Scott. The last time these guys wrestled, what a great match it was. It was only one move, but what a great gimmick with Lee Scott signing a contract and all that good stuff. He gets another shot here, but before the match can start, we got Tommy Rich in an insert promo. He just won't go away, Steve. Somebody say something about Lee Scott. Tommy Rich actually name drops Lee Scott for this match. I thought that was so cool. So Tommy even knows what's up with Lee Scott here. Lee Scott far more entertaining than Tommy Rich in 1989, I'll tell you that much. And Tommy talks about his career in the 90s, heading into the 90s, and I wrote, Tommy, if you only knew. Between the York Foundation and the FBI, oh, Tommy Rich.
Hey, man, at least he got to hang out with Tracy Smothers for quite a bit. So
yeah, that's true.
It can't be all that bad, right? This was dedicated in his name, earlier. So I would like to hang out with Tracy Smothers there for however long Tommy Rich
Couple
did
years,
in the FBI.
roughly, or something like that. Yeah,
probably not a non-funny moment with those guys.
No, I'm sure
to
it
be
was,
honest, probably
yes.
very entertaining.
A lot of ad-libbing nonsense during the promos as well, if I remember correctly. As this match gets going, though, it's Lee Scott holding his own against Lex Luger. And Lex looks a little pissed, but he doesn't sell it, and he gives Lee a high five for it.
Love it.
Lee Scott then surprises Luger with a drop kick and an arm drag. Lex again looks a little embarrassed, but he doesn't sell it. And he wants to give Lee Scott another high five. But he fools Lee Scott, and he clotheslines his head off, knocking Lee upside down into a backflip out of a clothesline, because that's Lex Luger. And Lexer follows that up with a press slam, a power slam, a superplex, and a torture. No, maybe he tortured poor Lee Scott, but it wasn't the torture rack here. Lex trying everything on Lee Scott, even new things, as Lex Luger ascends to the top rope. I was waiting for the ultimate.
Ow! Right in the schnoz!
But Lex manages to keep balance, and he comes off the top with sort of one of those Bret Hart-style elbow forearms. I don't really know how to describe it here, but Luger gets the pin with the move in 2 minutes, 54 seconds.
Yeah, very entertaining. And it kind of plays off. Remember the Lee Scott gimmick on Main Event after he first turned heel? It kind of played into that where, he kind of shook his hand and offered him to lay down for him and all that. And so they kind of played off of that. Since we obviously watched it on the grade, it kind of sticks out. But my note here, I was like, this Luger is the best Luger when he's selling a little bit for the not necessarily the job guys, but when he makes himself vulnerable a little bit, does a really great job of selling instead of just yelling. I felt like if he just continued on this path, he probably could have ended up being one of the greatest. If he just stuck with this 1989 version of himself and just added to it, I really feel like he could have escalated and got to where he needed to be with the right booking. It's just one of those things. And people shit on him for his work, but in 89, he could definitely work. And even in his book, he was trained by Matsuda. And I think even Ric Flair or Dusty Rhodes, both of them told him. He's like, he even asked, do I need to add anything to my repertoire? And Dusty Rhodes and Matsuda said, no, just do moves that show off your body because that's what's going to get you over. And so he took that to heart, and he never really progressed past going off that middle rope with an elbow drop, to be honest with you. But when you're your guy that trains you and your booker, like Dusty Rhodes, tells you, just show your body, that's all you need. And that's all you hear for however long you heard it. I mean, what do you expect? What's going to happen? Like we talked about, he doesn't care about the business. He just wants to get paid. So he's not going to care enough to want to be a Ric Flair in the ring or a Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels or something like that. He just wants to get paid as easy as possible. So just a combination of things, but it is what it is. But this is a fun match.
Yeah, Lex trying something new here. And I got to say, these guys really clearly know what they have in Lee Scott, because they go that extra mile with him. They work these spots into the match with him rather than just beating him up like most of the other job guys. The SST works spots out with Lee Scott. Lex Luger seems to be a fan of some sort of Lee Scott. He knows what he's got anyway. He makes him look good, and Lex, gives him a little bit in return. Like, hey, let's add this high five spot in here instead of me just kicking your ass, because it'll make it more fun. So yeah, very cool stuff there.
It's
as
really
we go.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like Mike Sharp in WWF, how they kind of put him over a little bit and give him a little offense. And you know who Mike Sharp is. We know who Lee Scott is. And to get the respect.
It's terrible to compare Mike Sharp to Lee Scott, though.
Well, I'm just saying that.
I know what you're saying.
WWF.
I'm just trying to
but like
compare the two, and I'm just like,
Lee Scott is a million times better, more entertaining. But it's really, really cool that these wrestlers are actually, giving him something. He's putting his body on the line for these guys week in and week out, and it's really nice to see like they appreciate it. So
yeah, I feel like even when Sid murders him, I feel like Sid's not really holding back, but he's not trying to kill him forever because he wants to be able to do it again. So everybody's showing him a little bit of respect anyway. I think I would have liked to have seen Lee Scott against the heel Ric Flair. That might have been fun because I could see Flair selling a couple of surprise near falls, or you know the way Rick sells things. It would have been fun.
Oh yeah, that would have been excellent.
We move on. Pedicino knows. He knows that Terry Funk has been fined and suspended. He also knows that Robin Green is not her real name. Well, you know everything, Joe. What is it? Joe doesn't tell us, though, because he doesn't know, so he's lying. The fans man doesn't know at all, but he promises to find out as the show moves on. Promo time with the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Jim Ross interviews Nate about the suffocation angle.
Have you one of the most scariest, tenuous situations I've ever seen, I've ever witnessed, for a man to come in the ring and put a plastic bag over someone's head. Now, you've been injured a lot of times, and man, oh man, I've never heard you complain. I've never heard you complain about this situation. Don't you think that this thing has escalated past the realm of sportsmanship, past the realm of survival?
Well, Jim, I agree with you totally. Unfortunately, the sport of professional wrestling does not have the guidelines that a lot of the other professional sports do. Over the years, I've had to take things into my own hands, and I have done things that I'm not proud of. But I have never taken a plastic bag and tried to suffocate a man. I have never taken a branding iron until I had to in past months to defend myself. I have never intentionally tried to maim anybody in my wrestling career. It's obvious that Gary Hart is a very deranged person. I didn't like Gary Hart when I met him 10 years ago. I despise him now. Terry Funk, once a man I admired, is another man that I cannot help but despise. There is no place in this sport for him. However, Ric Flair has never cried. I've never asked for anything since I've been in the sport. I've gone out and I have earned the position in this wrestling business that I have. Therefore, Terry Funk, Muda, Slater, Hart, along with Sting and a few good friends that I have in this sport, I'm going to see to it personally, if it takes me the rest of my wrestling career. Nothing takes precedence on your departure from this sport. Being the world champion is the greatest honor a man can have in professional athletics. But to be the world champion and not be able to hold your head in the air means nothing. The bottom line is, I'm coming and you're going. Woo!
Rick says the sport does not have the guidelines that a lot of other sports do. He's taken things into his own hands in the past, and even Rick admits he's gotten carried away and done some things he's not proud of, looking back at it, and he's never went this far. And I wrote, really? Or I thought, really? You haven't went this far? I mean, maybe not a suffocation, but he says he's never taken a branding iron until he had to defend himself. He's never intentionally tried to maim someone. And I had to go back to all the people he's smashed their faces into the concrete, and dusty roads, and the baseball bats, and all these other things, but it's Ric Flair, the baby face, so he's rewriting, he's rewriting history here.
No.
So basically, Flair's saying that this is, somebody's leaving town one way or another by the time this is over with.
Definitely planting the seeds. This is a really, really good promo.
Agreed.
He's like, I'm happy to be world champion, but I can't even enjoy it because every time I turn around, I'm trying to get murdered, essentially, or these guys are pulling out all these stops to end him. It doesn't even feel like it's for the title anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Funk keeps on saying he wants the belt, it doesn't feel like it's for the belt. He wants Flair's career. When you have somebody in the mindset that Funk's in when it comes to that, it definitely makes it harder to appreciate the fact that you're the champion. You're fighting for your life, not necessarily the belt. And Flair is definitely grounded and, not necessarily the heel Flair that we're all accustomed to. Promos aren't maybe as good as they are when he's a heel, but he's adapted and made it work, and this was an excellent promo
of the show. But as we move on, it's time for revenge. It's time for the Dynamic Dudes, advised by Jim Cornette, to take on the New Zealand Militia. This week they're managed by Paulie Dangerously, and Dangerously's last appearance on the NWA TV here in '89. And the story for the next match is the Dynamic Dudes, they want revenge on the Militia. Of course, Johnny Ace was out with a legit fractured cheekbone, and they played it up like the Militia did it here. Cornette couldn't get Jim Herd to agree for the Midnights to work a program with any tag team in the upper echelon. He named them all, and Jim Herd turned them all down. So the only team left, Jim Cornette finally picks the name the Dynamic Dudes for the Midnights to work a program with. And Jim Herd agreed. And Corny states it's because the Dudes were the only team that Jim Herd liked less than the Midnight Express. So there you have it there. And
I will say, though,
yes.
I remember this angle. I remember this feud, and I know where it goes. And you can shit on the Dudes all you want, and I will going forward. But the way this angle plays out is excellent, and it's memorable. And so Cornette and his infinite wisdom and just how great he is turned this chicken shit into chicken salad.
Yes.
He did an excellent job with it. So, Jim Herd, thanks for giving Jim Cornette a bone. And I'm glad you did, because this is one of the better angles and stories. Even though it's not very long, it's pretty good for 89. It's one of my favorites. So
yeah, I think Herd underestimated what Cornette could do with anything. Like you said, chicken shit into chicken salad. It's an excellent analogy when talking about the dynamic Dudes into this storyline here. But they have a storyline to finish up right here as the Dudes look for revenge on the militia. And I like that they actually hit the ring to attack the militia because they're here for revenge. So no waiting for the bell and locking up and all that horse shit. It's right into the action. The match goes on. They do wind up getting heat on the Dudes, and we wind up seeing heat on Shane Douglas so that Ace can get that big hot tag. Rip Morgan misses a knee from the middle rope. Double hot tags to Jacko, Victory, and Johnny Ace. We get a four-way melee in the ring. Paulie dangerously tries to hand Victory the canteen, but Cornette yanks Paulie off the apron. The canteen drops to the mat as Jack Victory bends over to pick it up with his big fat ass in the air. It's Johnny Ace with a schoolboy. Are you shitting me? A schoolboy on Jack Victory. What a revenge move. As the Dudes get the win, 6 minutes, 45 seconds, making the big comeback for revenge, and a schoolboy does it against the militia of all people. Not very definitive revenge on an undercard tag team, but hey, the Dudes get the win here.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job of switching up their tag team moves during this match. They did like a forearm gut, a shot to the gut and then a bulldog. So they're trying to get away from those moves where they're doing them together, like the double drop kick.
The simultaneous hip toss. Yes, things like this.
Yeah, those sort of things. So it's like one guy does something and the next guy doesn't move right after it. It makes more sense, so it looks a little bit better. They don't look clumsy and out of place. So, which
also makes you think that Cornette is actually really advising them as well, because that's kind of how the Midnight's tag team work. Other than the Flapjack, that's how they kind of do their tag team work as well. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's what I meant by them looking better. They're just not doing things at the same time, which looks awkward and like shit. So,
yes.
You get revenge with a schoolboy. Amazing.
Pedicino knows. He talks about Jim Cornette advising the Dudes. He's asked if Jim Cornette spreads himself too thin, which team will Jim Cornette go with? Excellent question there by Pedicino. Something new out of Pedicino for once.
Yeah.
And it's a Fulton brothers, not the new, well, all right, the new Fantastics, just so you guys know. It's a replay from the Power Hour with the Fantastics losing to the Freebirds here. Why do they do this? I don't know. Pre-tape promo, Flying Brian is looking forward to his rematch with Eddie Gilbert tonight on World Championship Wrestling. And what do you think comes up next on the show, Steve? It's the replay of the suffocation angle, because they haven't shown it enough. As we get a promo from Gary Hart and Terry Funk to follow it up. It's actually the one from World Championship Wrestling where we learn Funk is fined and suspended from last week. And it's time for Gordon Soley to close the show. And this is where we learn Gordon Soley announces he's returned from a press conference with the NWA higher-ups and Ric Flair.
Just returned from the press conference called by the National Wrestling Alliance and Ric Flair, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. As you know, of course, Terry Funk was suspended indefinitely by the NWA, and he was assessed a $100,000 fine. Well, Flair has been lobbying the NWA to let Funk back into the ring, and now he has gone so far as to pay himself the $100,000 fine. He paid it personally to the NWA. The suspension has been lifted, the fine has been paid, and now Funk will go up against Ric Flair, who is seeking vengeance, in October 8th in the Omni in Atlanta in an I Quit NWA World title match. The first time in history such a match has been signed. Following that, it will be Sting and Flair facing Funk and Muta in the Halloween Havoc, October 28th in Philadelphia. All I can say is Flair has fire in his eyes and tremendous...
Flair wants Funk back in the ring. Ric Flair paid the $100,000 fine for Terry Funk, and Terry Funk has been reinstated at the request of the Nature Boy. That was fast, Steve. It took like a week. Dude was suspended from wrestling on TV for a week. And we learned that already there's going to be an I Quit match between Ric Flair and Terry Funk of the Omni on October 8th. And there's going to be a tag team match coming up at Halloween Havoc involving Funk and Sting, Flair and Sting against Funk and Muta. And that's the way we end Worldwide. And that's kind of contradicts World Championship Wrestling here because there's no announcement of the reinstatement yet. But Jim Cornette continues to act as co-host with Jim Ross. So I like that new continuity. Show kicks off World Championship Wrestling for September 23rd with the Great Muta back in handicap action against Ricky Nelson, Lynn Wagner, Dragon Suplex on Nelson, handspring and moonsault on Wagner. Muta gets the win, 50 seconds. Nice to see Muta back in a quick squash.
Yeah, I agree. He's kind of been off TV for a while since he won the belt. Pretty. It's nice to see Great Muta back for sure.
Yeah, and when we have seen him, it seems to be in tag matches. So it's nice to just be reminded of Muta and how great he is, the Great Muta, in those squash matches like that. Promo time, Jim Ross interviews Gary Hart. Hart talks the Funk fine and suspension, and they're still working on it with their lawyers. Gary Hart doesn't think Funk should be suspended, and he certainly doesn't think Funk has to pay the fine. Even though we just learned on Worldwide what happens, that's where we are on World Championship Wrestling. Promo time with the total package. Lex Luger says he's above everyone. He's more educated. He is the true total package. Whatever it takes to make him unbeatable. And this is where Lex issues an open challenge to anyone. If anyone has the guts, Lex Luger has issued a open challenge. We'll see who accepts that here in the next week or so. To the ring. The United States champion Lex Luger takes on Rusty Riddle. Lots of puns from Jim Ross and Jim Cornette about Luger's ego throughout this match. I felt like they were shooting on him a little bit as the U.S. champ hits a superplex. Didn't Barry Windham used to do that? And then kneels down and does a double bicep pose on Rusty Riddle to get the win in 3.5 minutes. A kneeling pose. Didn't Butch Reed used to do that? Lex is stealing everything that works from those who are no longer here or perceived to be no longer here anyway.
Hey, man, whatever works, right? I didn't mind it. Just like you said, I think he's just toying with things. He has nothing going on besides Tommy Rich, so he's just experimenting with things. I feel like that's what this is. See what works, what isn't.
We're shown footage once again of the Scott Steiner attack by Woman and her unseen doom from the limo. And it's back to the ring with the Z-Man taking on Tommy Angel. And I wrote again, this music sucks. Z-Man wins with the sleeper, 3 minutes, 36 seconds. Jim Ross wants to call the sleeper the Z-Lock, Steve. Sounded awful. And it sounds kind of close to Ziploc. And I'm glad that didn't stick because Jim Ross is really trying to sell it here. He tried to coin it during the match. He even asked Cornette, you think we should start calling this the Z-Lock? And I think Corny kind of hesitantly said, sure, we can call it the Z-Lock, but I don't think it sticks very long. The Z-Lock. Oh, my.
Yeah, not very good.
Stick to commentary, JR.
Yeah, that's right.
Here it is. It's the rematch to the Flying Brian Eddie Gilbert match. Of course, you got to remember that we're not supposed to remember the match from Worldwide. This is actually the rematch from the World Championship Wrestling match where Pillman got that win with Eddie's foot under the ropes. And then, of course, the count out in the second match. They shake hands before this match, which is kind of weird because Eddie refused to shake Pillman's hand on Worldwide, but it didn't happen, so hey, whatever. Pillman on top early, which frustrates Hot Stuff. Hot Stuff drops down since Pillman out of the ropes to the apron. He tries for Air Pillman early, but Eddie Gilbert sees it coming and he jumps out of the ring. Pretty wise and smart move there by Hot Stuff. I like that psychology. We get arm shit from both guys as they start talking trash and doing their best Tommy Rich with the arm bars, shoving in between the holds though, so they did keep things heated and interesting. Gilbert seemed to be the aggressor, the heel at the start of the match, but by mid-match, Brian Pillman was equal with the aggression and the heel tactics or whatever you want to call that. Pillman with a dropkick sends Eddie Gilbert outside the ring, upside down in the ropes, tangled up and to the floor. Eddie Gilbert takes over, though, back inside with an abdominal stretch until Brian Pillman winds up reversing one of Eddie's moves and landing a suplex. Bryan makes the comeback accidentally. Backdrops Eddie Gilbert over the top rope to the floor so Nick Patrick won't call a disqualification. How the fuck is this happening in every match? What kind of bad luck does Eddie Gilbert have? What are the odds that some bullshit thing happens every single match and it just happens to go Brian Pillman's way? I almost believe Nick Patrick is cheating for Pillman at this point. But it's Eddie Gilbert back into the ring with a slingshot sunset flip for 2. Pillman rolls out, cradles Gilbert, gets the win, 11 minutes, 39 seconds. Pillman definitively defeats Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert here. They kept hinting at a Gilbert heel turn, but they've pushed him so far down the card that they shit on him even more by not turning him heel here.
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate, but at least they got something out of him because he's not so far down just yet. Like, this is probably the nail in the coffin. But at least it kind of helped Pillman get elevated a little bit with him hanging out with Sting and Flair. Then all of a sudden he's beating Eddie Gilbert in 2 or 3 matches. Even though there's some suspicious refereeing going on that they never allude to, I think it still helped Pillman getting a decisive win or multiple wins over somebody like Eddie Gilbert to start here.
Right.
Mix this in with Norman, and it's been a pretty solid way to build up Flying Brian going forward.
And good for Eddie Gilbert for not really quitting. You know, and I don't mean quitting the business, but I mean quitting in his job in the ring of making his opponent look good. Eddie still worked hard here to do whatever he could do to make Brian Pillman look good and get the win here. So, it's good to see Eddie Gilbert still, even though he's not being used properly, the politics are in play, he's not taking it out on the guys he's wrestling.
Yeah, it's being a professional. That's all you can ask for, really.
During that match on commentary, Jim Cornette says that next week Dick Murdoch will be taking on Lex Luger. I would have loved to have seen that, but Jim Ross corrects Corny. He says it's actually Dick Murdoch versus Dan Spivey. Lex said he had better things to do. I wouldn't doubt that Lex Luger said he had better things to do. That sounds very Lex Luger-ish.
Hanging out at the gym, probably.
Yeah, collecting those paychecks, working out. Back to the ring, it's the Dynamic Dudes, advised by Jim Cornette, taking on Joe Cruz and Bob Cook. And they do a drop kick out of a heart attack spot. So Johnny Ace picks up the job guy and Shane Douglas with a drop kick. Interesting. Still terrible timing throughout, though, as they try some more double team moves, and the wipeout on Bob Cook gets the win in only 1 minute, 48 seconds. This Dudes thing just still isn't working for me, Steve. As we go into highlights again from Clash of the Champions. Want to guess what it is? I'm not even going to give you time to guess what it is. It's the suffocation angle. As we close the show,
Thanks.
Yes, Jim Ross interviews the world champion, Ric Flair. Flair announces that Sting suffered an ankle injury at the Clash, but he'll be back before a lot of people know it. He couldn't be happier for Terry Funk being suspended, but the only thing Rick wants is for the suspension to be lifted and for him to fight Funk as soon as possible. Flair says he can live with the NWA's decision, but Flair is alive and well. Here in 1989, he's the world champion, but he wants Funk back, and we've already kind of ruined it. Worldwide, they already announced that Funk's back. So this promo is a little late for Worldwide anyway.
Yeah. I don't know what's up. I don't know how Worldwide's getting everything a week or two before what Saturday Night's doing. But it's typically it seems to be the week before. It seems like when they're taping these things, they're putting them immediately onto Worldwide. But I think that changes here pretty soon. Thank God for that, because it just kind of ruins it. Saturday night's your big show, and if you tuned into syndication before you watch Saturday night, you already know what's going on, and then you watch Saturday night and you're confused. Like, well, why didn't they announce that Flair paid it off?
And it's not like it's the same. It's not like the same weekend either. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I would see something on Superstars or something huge happened on Challenge that they had to show it on Superstars, or I got Spotlight Friday night before Superstars or Challenge. So if an update, this is what happens. I didn't mind that. It was like a taste of, man, I got to watch this tomorrow. In this instance, it's Worldwide airing a week out. So we wait another week before we learn on World Championship Wrestling that Terry Funk is coming, being reinstated. That's the issue.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Because the way we're watching it is as if Pro and Worldwide's on in the morning on Saturday, then you got the Saturday night show, then obviously main event on Sunday. I know it's different depending on the syndication network and things like that. But when you do it that way, it's just like, man, Saturday night's your big show. That's where all this stuff should be the first time seeing it. You got to be extra careful with that, and you really need to draw the ratings there on cable, because that's how you're going to sell your pay-per-views and things like that. Because that's the one show you're going to control and have, theoretically should have the most eyeballs on, depending on your syndication situation. So I don't know how you continually do this over and over again.
We move on to Sunday night. It's the NWA main event for September 24th. I couldn't figure out if this actually aired on TBS or not. I think they did advertise the shows, though. I do believe it did. However, I have the syndicated version, so it makes it a little more fun, because doing the commentary solo all night long is Lance Russell for the matches. Unfortunately, we've seen all of these matches before. It's Pillman and Eddie Gilbert from Worldwide with the count out. It's Stan Lane and Michael Hayes with Jim Cornette causing the disqualification. We get the replay of the woman Scott Steiner beatdown. We get the video of Terry Funk being suspended. And the main event goes back a few weeks with Sting and Muta from the Power Hour, that really good, solid 13.5-minute match where Sting gets the win by disqualification when Gary Hart interferes. So the entire show is actually replay matches from shows that have already happened. The only thing cool about them is we get to hear Lance Russell's take. So that's all I got out of this show. It really was a nothing show. Or since this is a tribute to Tracy Smothers, it's a nothing happening show for this episode of the main event. But it was still cool that Lance Russell was on commentary calling these matches.
Absolutely. I love listening to Lance Russell talk, man. So good.
Yeah, I got so used to Lance calling action in Memphis that it's so awesome to hear him be able to call Ric Flair matches and Sting matches and Muta. He could handle anybody. It wasn't just that Memphis style. Lance could do it all.
Yeah, he definitely can. So he's one of those like kind of forgotten guys. He never really, outside of this, and I think that's it as far as his big, major corporation run.
Yeah,
and,
national. Yeah.
People don't really talk about it. People don't really talk about him there. It's always Ross and Soley and those guys, but you hardly ever hear Lance Russell. But man, Lance Russell's definitely right there. There's no doubt about it. He's a tremendous talent. Such a soothing voice to listen to wrestling being called.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you, man. Lance Russell, easily one of my top two of all time for sure. Maybe my number one if I sit around and think about it long enough. Definitely one of my favorites. And we move on to our final week 3 of 3 here on this ultra mega mass homicide edition of the Wrestling Memory Grenade. It's NWA Power Hour for September 29th. Most of these matches taped back in Roanoke on the 18th of September. We kick things off with the replay from Worldwide. It's the Dynamic Dudes over the New Zealand Militia with that Schoolboy of Revenge, Steve. And it's moving on to Gordon Soley's WNN. Ric Flair has called for a special announcement regarding Terry Funk on World Championship Wrestling this week, even though we saw it last week on Worldwide. Scott Steiner is back from his beating after a week, and Robin Green will also explain herself this week, Steve. Jake Roberts is also back from his neck injury in the WWF, and he's looking for revenge against the $1 Million Man. Thought it was funny hearing Gordon call him the $1 Million Man instead of Ted DiBiase, putting over the WWF gimmick. This is the first time we've heard mention of the WWF, I think, in quite a while. And it's only Jake that Gordon seems to be focused on as well.
I wonder why.
And Eduardo Perez has passed away, a longtime legend of the sport. And the top 10 remains the same this week as last week. Go back to the ring. It's another replay, this time from a couple weeks ago. World champion Ric Flair taking on Bill Irwin. Irwin escapes the figure 4, but Ric Flair turns a hip toss into a backslide, retains the title in 7 minutes. They claim this is non-title match, but the ring announcer says otherwise, because he says, still, World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair. So Flair gets the win there. We've already seen that match. We'll move right along. Some replays here on Power Hour. What's up with that? And it's time for Funk's Grill. And Funk again with Gary Hart. Funk notes he was suspended and fined $100,000. Well, no shit. We figured that out by now. Funk teaches the kids to say no. Say no to your parents when they tell you to eat everything on the table. Say no to your parents when they tell you to clean your room. I love how he goes heel and then randomly says something face to the kids because he tells them also in the middle of all this to say no to drugs. So Terry Funk just being Terry Funk.
He's all over the place.
Yes.
But this one was really good. This is a fun Funk screw.
It was. And I think
one.
I don't know if I wrote that at the end here, but I did enjoy this one. Terry then said he learned the word no as well, as he told the NWA no, he won't pay that $100,000 fine. Gary Hart then walked in to Funk's grill and offered to fly Ric Flair in first class to Amarillo so he could fight it out with Funk man to man with the cows and the prairie. Funk said he loved that idea because it would mean either he or Flair would have to quit. There's that word again. And he would never quit, even if he had his arm ripped off and he was ran over by a tractor or a plow. How graphic, Terry Funk. As a promo, I love this. This was fun.
Yeah, I liked it too. And I like the end too. Hard ass Funk if he should present it to Flair, and Funk just tells him, send him his ticket.
Yeah.
I'll be waiting. Yeah. So to be honest with you, that'd been a hell of a match. It'd been fun to watch that.
What, them two fighting around cows in a prairie? Yeah, I would have loved to have seen that. It would have been fucking awesome.
It would have. I'm being serious. I think it would have been great.
Yeah, I think Inoki and Tiger Jeet Singh, I don't know when they did the Desert Island match, but I mean, I could see just Funk and Flair fucking throwing sand in each other's face or dirt and whatever and flopping around in cow pies and pile driver on cow shit. It would have been great.
They would have made it work for sure.
Oh, I'm not.
It wasn't like
I wasn't trying to be. I was trying to be funny, but I was being serious at the same time. I'd have loved to have seen it.
Yeah.
Barbed wire, cactus. Oh my God, the things you could do.
This is gonna sound ridiculous, but too bad like Vince Russo didn't have a hand in this. He would have done it. 1989, you ain't gonna get that. But
no, you would have got a cactus on a pole match. Is what you would have got. That's what you would have got with Vince Russo.
That's it. But somebody needs to be there to do it. But yeah, that would have been great. Very entertaining, I'm sure. But it's not the cards. That's the theme.
So
could have been.
All episode long, it's been replay action from prior shows, but we do get one single unique match. It's the Great Muta with Gary Hart taking on Dick Murdoch. This is I guess you could call it a rematch from several months ago when these two stepped in the ring. Solid old school match here. Back and forth, they both work the leg, random pinfalls in between just to break up the monotony. Gary Hart interferes repeatedly, snapping his white towel that he's now randomly carrying around with him at ringside. Dick Murdoch goes outside after Gary Hart, about 10 minutes into the match, allows the Great Muta to follow him out, but Murdoch was ready for him. Pops the Great Muta, and back into the ring, Muta does take back over in the ring. Hart assists with leverage for some near falls. Dick Murdoch returns with an O'Connor roll, but Gary Hart's on the apron, so when Dick Murdoch gets kicked off, he runs over and nails Gary Hart. And at this point, Dick Slater makes his way down the ringside, so now we have two Dicks at the ring, as Murdoch drops the big elbow and makes the cover, but Tommy Young, still with Gary Hart, Slater walks around and blasts Murdoch in the head. Dick hits Dick with his cast, and Muta covers Murdoch, picks up the win, 13 minutes, 47 seconds. Now, I was curious as I was watching this match particularly, was this out of your scope? Did you not enjoy this? Because I know some of these working a hold, the entire match type things you're not a big fan of, but to me, in this instance, I thought they told a good story with it, in my opinion.
No, midway through, I made a note to myself because I wanted to mention it. I thought it was some really nice mat wrestling between these two, and like you said, working the leg. I thought it was really entertaining, and it seemed like they weren't doing much, just your basic wrestling match, but they were staying busy. Like they was constantly moving, and the holds weren't on for long enough to get boring, and they was transitioning to other things. And I enjoyed the hell out of it. It was a very good story, very good match. And Murdoch came to work. It's the complete opposite of what Tommy Rich is. Murdoch doesn't look out of place in the ring with Great Muta at all.
No.
He can do the kip-ups. He can sell. And
drop kicks.
He knows how to tell us. Yeah, drop kicks. Everything that you need to make yourself look like you're wrestling in 1989 instead of 1979. Dick Murdoch can do it. So, no, I was very entertained by this match. Very, very good.
During this bout, it was noted that Dick Slater would take on Ric Flair and that the Dynamic Dudes would meet the Freebirds both this weekend on the main event. And we'll get to that as we close out the show, those matches and things. But it was also noted that Sting would face Muta on October 8th at the Omni with Gary Hart in a cage. This is very curious because if you remember, we were told that Sting would face Muta 2 months ago at the closing of the Omni, the Great American Bash Tour. We didn't get that match. We wound up getting a tag team match of sorts with Sting missing. And then they came back in September, and Sting lost the match to Muta. Muta won the TV title. Here on October 8th, which I'll get into a little more next week, Muta's a no-show. And it winds up being Sting against Gary Hart. And you see how Gary Hart bumps. So I can't imagine that was very pretty.
Oh, what the hell did Muta do?
I don't know. We'll get to it next week. I don't want to waste too much time on that right now, but I just thought it was a funny note, and I put it there, so I want to get that in. As we move on to Saturday and NWA Pro for September 30th, Bob and Lance on the call, and they talk about the Scott Steiner limo clip with Robin Green to kick things off. Pre-tape promo from Jim Cornette with the Dynamic Dudes. He said he's told them that if you want to run with the big dogs, you've got to get up off the porch. The Freebirds are the big dogs, the champions. They can't win the titles tonight. They have a non-title match, but they can shake up the world. They're in for a shock tonight. Maybe, just maybe, the shock of their lives for the Freebirds. We'll see. SkyScrapers in the ring, taking on Rusty Riddle and Lynn Wagner. Both job guys in the ring at the same time. This is a handicap match. And I didn't understand at first because I thought, well, okay, either Sid or Dan is going to wrestle both guys. They've done that repeatedly. But what they mean here now, new dynamic, is both job guys get to be in the ring at the same time while Sid and Dan Spivey have to tag. I thought that was unique and different. I didn't mind it at all. What do you think of the idea?
I thought it was good. It works for the SkyScrapers.
Yeah.
I don't know if they continue to do this going forward, but it's something different and it's unique, and it's one of those little things that you don't really think about, but it actually elevates the SkyScrapers a little bit. Like, they're so damn bad and vicious that you can have 4 guys in there in the ring if you want, and we'll tag and still kick your ass. So those little things, kind of like what they did with Muta when he first came in.
Yeah.
Those 2-on-1 matches, things like that. So whenever you're beating 2 guys at once,
even.
Yeah.
With Muta,
3-on-1, whatever the case may be. I like how they tried different things, because they did that with Muta. You had to beat all 3 within, 10 minutes?
Yeah, well, he did it. Yeah, he did it in like a minute. It wasn't 2 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, he did it in like 4 minutes total, I think it was, or 3 minutes, something like that. But
yeah,
just doing those little things to switch up, just a normal handicap match to make it a little unique, a little different. It's not the same stuff over and over. But yeah,
I could have only wished that this went a little longer, because they didn't really give it enough time to shine. As Sid with the whirly bird and a power bomb on Wagner, SkyScrapers pick up the win in only 45 seconds. I would have liked to have seen it go a little longer, since they could beat on both guys at the same time. Lance Russell wonders if you'd love for your daughter to be dating that, as they show Sid on the ring. Bob says the Scrapers are indeed bigger than the Road Warriors, and ponders if they make buildings big enough to hold that match. I like that line. Very cliche, but the way Bob said it, I love the way he put over the SkyScrapers and the Roadies. He says, I wonder if they make a building big enough to hold that match. It just sounded big time. And you start to envision these teams standing across the ring from each other. Good call by Bob Caudle.
Absolutely.
We see the video again of Scott Steiner taking the beating of his life from the limo guys, whoever they may be. Ron Simmons' voice, Kevin Sullivan's body, who knows? Back to the ring, it's Dick Murdoch in singles action with Trent Knight. I think Dick just comes and goes as he pleases here. He just randomly pops up, does a few matches, disappears, comes back again. So we get the goodness of Dick Murdoch here in September, October. I don't think he sticks around all that long, so I'll enjoy it while I can get it here. As Lance and Bob actually spend this match talking Robin Green in that angle we just saw. We'll hear from Robin later in the show. Very basic Murdoch squash here. Doesn't even bother to use the brain buster. Elbow drop, get the win, baby. 2 minutes, 17 seconds. Sicilian elbow. Thought about that, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah, really nothing going on there.
Pedicino knows. He knows Terry Funk's suspended. He knows Robin Green is up to no good. And we get the pre-tape, the woman pre-tape. So we saw the attack on Scott Steiner, and now we're going to hear from the woman known as Robin Green for the very first time since her heel turn. The first thing she wants us to know is her name is not Robin Green, and she's not from Milwaukee. She is not a manager or a valet. She is woman. She will conquer wrestling, Steve. Not since Cleopatra has a woman conquered the world like woman. There's a saying, there's a woman behind every good man, but she stands behind no man. She chose Rick Steiner because he had no weaknesses in the ring. But she found out he did have a weakness in his heart. And she showed us and showed the Steiners. The men who beat up Scott Steiner were bad boys, Steve, and she likes bad boys. She will do whatever she has to do. She will rule the wrestling world. What kind of woman wakes up one day and says, I'm going to rule wrestling? Apparently, Robin Green, Nancy Sullivan, whatever you want to call her here, woman has basically debuted. Robin Green is gone and woman is here. She is woman. Hear her roar, Steve.
I don't remember the promo like this one where she basically said why she is what she is or who she is.
Right.
But I thought this was really good. I mean, it was real slow. She had to think about what she was saying. So the delivery wasn't the best, but what she was saying was pretty cool. It was different for 1989 because, I mean, women were on their path or on their way to, you know, working and becoming independent and things like that. It was huge.
The 80s were big for that, yeah.
That. And this was reminiscent of that. Like the comment that really stuck out to me was like you mentioned, she stands behind no man. She's woman. She's bigger than anybody. Man, woman, doesn't matter.
I think Lex Luger would argue with that.
Well, yeah, he would. Get these two in the room. Anyway, I thought this was really good. If you can get past the delivery and just listen to the words and what she's saying, it makes perfect sense. And I like how she said that she realized that the Steiners really had no weakness, but the weakness she did see was Rick Steiner's heart, and she attacked it. And that means she's cold-blooded and calculated and everything else. So you automatically know she's going to do whatever it takes to get her guys over. Really nice beginning to, like, you know, peeling off those layers to what she is and who she is. So I thought this was really good. Outside of the delivery.
We've spent the last 9 months of the NWA basically trying to squash narratives that are out there that weren't true, or trying to uncover things that when people talk about certain angles or certain feuds or certain turns, they forget or it's never really mentioned certain parts, certain aspects. We talk about Lex Luger's heel turn. So many people believe it came out of nowhere when it was being built up for weeks right in front of our eyes as we watch the TV. And here I got to say, over this week and the next episode, when we talk about the next woman promo as well, she explains everything. Whereas a lot of people, including myself, because I haven't seen this TV in years, she actually explains it. It makes sense by the time she's done talking. And yeah, she does get that deer in the headlights look a few times during these promos, and then she snaps back into whatever lines she's supposed to be saying. And like you said, as long as you can ignore the fact that you can see her kind of lose concentration and think for her words at times, as long as you're just paying attention to what she's trying to get over, it makes perfect sense. And it's actually pretty well done for the fact that they had to come up with this shit on the fly.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that.
Promo time, pre-tape promo with your boy Lex Luger. He says he can write his own tickets.
To listen right now since he's the U.S. heavyweight champion.
You know, everybody knows that the total package, Lex Luger can write his own ticket in the sport of professional wrestling. By that I mean I can wrestle for any organization. I can wrestle anywhere I want. Promoters live and die to have the name Lex Luger on their cards. I am the hottest property in professional wrestling today. I am the standard by which all other wrestlers are judged. I am head and shoulders above the rest. Lex Luger knows, and this is why he is in the NWA, that it has the greatest competitors, the greatest competition wrestling-wise that there is. That's why I'm here. But at this point in time, I said it before, I have grown bored. By that I mean, where is all this great competition? I think the problem is that Lex Luger has become bigger than the sport itself. The problem is that nobody wants to put their big reputations on the line against the total package Lex Luger, because Lex Luger is absolutely, at this point in time, unbeatable. So the bottom line is this. I issue an open challenge to any wrestler in NWA, and the challenge is this. If you think I got a big mouth, if you don't think I'm the best, come and shut me up. Sign the contract, take on the total package Lex Luger.
The NWA has the greatest competition that there is. It's why Lex is here. But he's grown bored. And wrestling Tommy Rich for months will do that to you, Steve. Where is the great competition? Where is the great competition? He's become bigger than the sport itself. Wow. What a fucking ego. Nobody wants to put their reputation on the line against Lex Luger, who's unbeatable. He's also unbearable in this promo. He's issuing an open challenge right now. Shut his mouth and take on the total package. I love these lines here. He's bigger than the sport itself. Wow. A new level of heel.
I think the best part about it, honestly, is the fact that he believes everything he's saying.
I believe
100%.
Oh, yeah.
He believes it. There's no doubt about it. When you can sense that and you can feel it, and it's not. Part of that could be, we're 30 years later. We know how Lex Luger was. We've heard all the stories and know how he is or was back then. And so we have a pretty good idea that we know he believed what he was saying here. But in 1989, like when you look like that and you wrestle the way you do, and you can come out and say whatever the hell you want. Let's be honest. And it's going to be believable. So the heel turn was the best thing that happened to him. And these promos, I'm surprised we haven't heard, the same shit for the last 3 or 4 shows. But he's kind of mixed it up. Same stuff, just different delivery and different words saying it. But yeah,
somebody bought a thesaurus is what happened here. 10 different ways to say the same thing.
I'm sure he can do it. He's very intelligent. So,
somebody say something about armbar, Steve. It's Wildfire Tommy Rich taking on Agent Steel, and yes, we get the armbar. But you know what else we get? A middle rope Thez press. Tommy Rich. Somebody went up to Tommy and said, "You need to up your game." You mean like elevate it? Absolutely, Tommy. All right, and he goes out there and he comes off the middle rope with the Thez press, gets the win in 3 minutes and 51 seconds.
All right, I gotta give Tommy Rich some credit here. I think it's the first and probably the only time. But during this match, he does the crossbody off the middle rope and misses. So at the end, when he comes back, he fakes the crossbody,
right?
And the dude
falls
reverse
down.
Body. But when he gets up, he turns it around and then he does the middle rope Thez press. I thought it was pretty cool. It was different for Tommy Rich. The story was decent, even for a jobber match. But so kudos to you, Tommy Rich. I didn't write that. Different.
I didn't write all that finish down, but when you said that, I immediately remembered because Tommy goes up and fakes the reverse body block, and most guys that do that, they just turn around on the ropes and hit a drop kick, hit a whatever. Tommy can't do that. He fakes the reverse body block, gets down, turns around, and then goes back up to the middle rope for the Thez press. So. Now that you mentioned that, I do recall that. So, yes, Tommy Rich, baby. All the way. As Pedicino knows.
In all his glory.
Yes, in all his glory. Splendor, baby. And Pedicino knows. He knows Jim Cornette is advising the Dynamic Dudes. And we're to the ring for the World Tag Team Champion Freebirds taking on the Dynamic Dudes with Jim Cornette in their corner. And this is non-title. These kids are not comfortable being dragged out of the crowd as once again the dudes pull a kid out and make him do that stupid little hand signal with them. What bullshit. And this kid looked like they literally just take him without asking and drag him all the way to ringside. I wonder what the parents thought about this shit. During the match, we get a Freebirds promo during the intros as the dudes dominate damn near the entire match. Shane Douglas with a quick pin attempt on Michael Hayes and a random 10-minute time limit bell sounds 8 minutes into the match. Whoever shaved 2 minutes off this, good call. TV title matches last longer than this. 10 minutes for TV here, non-title match. But the dudes hold their own and they hang in there for the full time limit, which is the story leading into the pay-per-view.
Yeah, it felt very abrupt and out of nowhere. Because usually when you have a time limit draw there, the commentary is, counting it down, letting you know that, hey, it's coming. It is the bell just rang. Like it was. Yeah,
there was nothing even. The pace didn't pick up. They were just in the middle of normal spots, and the bell sounds. Very awkward finish.
The timekeeper got fed up with this shit match. It's like, we're done. Send it home.
That's the greatest job in the world, to be a timekeeper. You can just kind of end the match whenever the hell you feel. Oh, fuck this. Dong. Tommy Rich match. Dong. 2 minutes in. Dong. That'd be great. We get a Teddy Long pre-tape promo.
Sid out here, please?
Oh, Sid. Oh, man. That'd be awesome. Tommy Rich versus
Can we get him
Sid.
out here, please?
We get a pre-tape promo from Teddy Long, and it's clear the SkyScrapers are going to feud with the Road Warriors, because Teddy Long refers to him as the Road Runners, as in running away. And this is where Teddy says that Hawk squawks, and I was waiting to see what he rhymed with animal, and he didn't disappoint, as he says, animal is a cannibal. So Teddy Long just looking for anything that rhymes here. This makes absolutely no sense. And Teddy Long does say for the Roadies to cover their entire body in spikes because you're going to need it. These SkyScrapers are going to take out the Road Warriors. It's evident at this point this will be a feud.
I'm all here for it. Let's go.
More talk of the suffocation angle, the Funk suspension. Gordon Soley here once again announces that Funk has been reinstated. Flair paid the fine, so now it's been covered on Worldwide last week, Pro this week. We'll finally learn that, I hope, on World Championship Wrestling. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Wait till we get there in a minute, because Dick Slater in the main event, if that's what you want to call it, taking on Ricky Nelson. And Slater gets in the ring, just beats the shit out of Ricky Nelson, pile drives him less than 20 seconds into their match. You can't even call it a match. I don't even know if the bell sounded. Slater just stomps a mud hole in Ricky Nelson and then tosses him out of the ring. So I wrote no contest, ? I have no idea. Dick Slater gets on the house mic, says he didn't come out here to wrestle an idiot. I love that. Where's Ric Flair? Slater calls Ric Flair out, and here he comes, the Nature Boy. Comes darting to the ring. He attacks Dick Slater. It looks like he kicked him in the ass, literally. Dick Slater from behind. And this match is going to be shown, we learn, in its entirety next week on Pro. And I wrote, this is a match? I hadn't realized that they turned it into a match. Dick Slater calls Flair out. Flair gets in the ring, and they start wrestling. And then we learn it's a world title match. I wrote, wow. And 3 minutes of the match are shown here. Very hot. Ric Flair all over Dick Slater for those 3 minutes. The conclusion will be shown next week. This ending just felt so Jim Crockett Promotions. I loved it. It was awesome. Really had me hyped.
Yeah, this is great. This is great. Lance Russell's on commentary. This is the start of the match. You'll have to get the rest of it next week on Pro. So again, they do a great job of making you want to tune in to that show's next week's show. Pro ended with them starting the match, and what's funny is, well, I won't give it away, but definitely, I was excited to see the match. I couldn't wait to start watching next week's stuff so I could see the match. So, excellent job on syndication there.
And we move on to our final 605 show this week, World Championship Wrestling for September 30th. Taped back on September 20th at Center Stage. Cornette still hanging in there as commentator, so we're keeping it going. Continuity. Jim Ross and Jim Cornette here. World Champion Ric Flair in the ring to take on Gene Ligon. That's more Ligon's speed. Definitely way more Flair wrestling on TV since the Nature Boy got the book. I wonder if it's Flair's logic in booking or if it's just seeing if it'll pop a rating. Like, I wonder if Ric Flair's doing this because he's Ric Flair and he wants to wrestle. If it's because he thinks having the world champion wrestle will pop a rating. I wonder what Rick's, or maybe a little bit of both, who knows what his thought process is here. Ric Flair gets the win with the figure 4, 3 minutes, 23 seconds.
Yeah, I'm wondering the same too. It's probably a little bit of both. He's the guy. He's the champ. So if he can't pop a rating, nobody can really. So he's probably doing it twofold. He wants to work, but he also wants to get those ratings in.
Promo time. Jim Ross interviews U.S. champion Lex Luger. Lex out there in street clothes. He talks his open challenge. I wrote here same routine, so it was a little more of the same stuff we've already heard here. Lex says he's unbeatable and unbearable. I'll agree with that. With all of his combined attributes. Talks about being intelligent while he flubs his lines at the same time. Thought it was funny that the guy was talking about how smart he was, even though he couldn't complete the sentence without flubbing it. So Jim Ross thinks there's some solid challenges out there, Lex. Lex doesn't think so, but Ross says there are some solid challenges coming up in the NWA. Lex tells JR to show respect and take the bass out of his voice when he addresses the U.S. champion. I didn't realize Jim had any bass in his voice here, but Lex thought so. And nobody has the intestinal fortitude to accept Lex Luger's open challenge.
Oh, man, I love the line to Jim Ross.
Take the bass out of his voice.
Yeah, he's just looking down on him like, dude, take the bass out of your voice when you address me. To be honest, man, you just never know what's real and what's fake with him. Luger's probably shooting a little bit. Who knows?
Yeah, I thought it would be great if he called like Jim Ross, like, why don't you settle down there, fatty? It just seems like something Lex would say at this point.
Oh yeah, something. But yeah, he's getting it over. Whatever he wants to be portrayed as, he's doing his best to get it over. So
we're at a point here we're at a point here in the NWA where Hawk is missing in action. I'm not really sure what's going on. I don't know if it's a substance abuse issue. I'm not trying to speculate. An injury, something going on at home. I don't really know what, but I do know that Animal does a few set of tapings by himself here, even works the house shows by himself here for a couple of weeks, seems like. And it's no different right here. Road Warrior Animal with Paul Ellering in his corner, taking on Powerhouse Tim Parker. Tim Parker found out who the real powerhouse was. Animal hits the ring, high impact moves, clothesline, gets the win in a mere 45 seconds, and it's promo time. Jim Ross with Road Warrior Animal and Paul Ellering. They're going to talk the SkyScrapers. Jim Ross pondered, what if the Roadies wrestled the SkyScrapers? Animal says for the last 6 years, the Road Warriors have been the dominant top tag team in the business. The SkyScrapers are big and bad, but Teddy Long is their downfall. And I thought to myself, what is he talking about? And it's Road Warrior Animal who had to remind me that Teddy Long was the one that cost the Roadies the World Tag Team titles to the varsity clubs all those months ago. So, wow, continuity, retro continuity here by Animal. I loved it. Anyone Teddy Long manages, Animal says the Road Warriors are going to knock down, and that includes the SkyScrapers. So Animal adding a little bit of backstory here to the match.
Job well done, Animal. I totally forgot about Teddy Long being the referee.
Yes.
What was it, Chi-Town Rumble?
Sure. Clash. I thought it was Clash. I think it was Clash 6.
Clash 1. Was it?
I think so.
Who knows? See? We're doing this on the grenade, and we don't even know. It's only been like maybe 5 months ago.
Do you know what's happened in those last 5 months? The book has changed, and oh my God, I don't even want to think about it.
Everything we watched wrestling-wise since then, we watched Full Gear. That's what wiped our brains of everything that's good in this world. No, so that is really cool. I remember I heard him say that, and I was like, oh yeah, he did do that. So great job by Animal there. I like how he ended up. He told him to step into the four corners of doom with Hawk and Animal. Pretty cool.
We get a replay Gordon Solie promo where he basically announces that Ric Flair has paid Terry Funk's fine. Terry Funk's been reinstated. We seem to cut to a Ric Flair promo, but the version I have cuts it out. So the only thing edited off this show is a Ric Flair promo. Very weird. And Jim Ross announces that Bruno Sammartino is coming to the NWA. That is crazy when you think about it for a minute here. Bruno will come to Halloween Havoc to referee the main event. Flair and Sting, Funk and Muta, Bruno the referee, in Philadelphia, one of Bruno's big towns. Big deal to get Bruno, who was always a New York guy.
Yeah, definitely. He hated Vince Jr. or what Vince Jr. was doing.
Yeah, it probably didn't take a whole lot of prodding to get Bruno to agree to do this because Bruno's very straight-laced. He hated that cartoon wrestling, as he called it. And then he comes and he referees a match inside a, air quotes, electrified steel cage with vines and shit growing in it that catches on fire. We'll get there in a few weeks. And back to the ring. It's Dan Spivey accompanied by Sid and Teddy Long, replacing Lex Luger, who has better things to do, which we already seen him on the show. He issued an open challenge, but then he refuses to wrestle Dick Murdoch. Where's the continuity in that? That makes no sense. But anyways, we get Spivey and Murdoch in the ring. Murdoch isn't a small dude himself, I noticed here. Not that I needed to be reminded. Murdoch with a dropkick drops Spivey down. Sid grabs Dick's leg as he comes off the rope. And this was great. Dick Murdoch just goes right out of the ring and goes right after Sid. That was so awesome. I marked out watching Dick Murdoch unload on Sid Vicious. What a fun match that would have been. And I had to laugh as Teddy Long smashes Dick Murdoch in the back with a double axe handle, which Murdoch no-sells. And then he begins to chase Teddy Long into the ring, where he's attacked by both SkyScrapers. Dick Murdoch picks up the win by disqualification in only 4 minutes, 45 seconds. But Dick Murdoch eats a spike powerbomb. Couldn't believe it. Dickie taking the spike powerbomb.
Yeah, this is a pretty fun match, if you want to call it that. It's mainly just getting to the point where he's getting beat up by the SkyScrapers, but solid match overall.
Promo time, Jim Ross now with Flying Brian. Pillman wants to be the first man to challenge Lex Luger, accept the open challenge for the U.S. title. Jim Ross says we will see if Lex has the guts to accept it next week. That should be fun.
Absolutely. I can't wait. I also liked how Pillman congratulated Jim Ross for actually getting through the Lex Luger interview. I thought that was pretty funny, too. Yeah, Pillman's pretty solid on the mic. He has He has some quick lines and things like that to where he's really entertaining on the microphone.
You know what's not entertaining, Steve? It's the dynamic dudes who are in the ring taking on Tommy Angel and Rick Ryder. Once again, the dudes accompanied by advisor Jim Cornette. Shit timing continues on their double teaming. Wipeout on Ryder ends this in 2 minutes, 10 seconds. They just got back. They beat some jobbers, and Jim Ross proclaims they're ready for the World Tag Team Championship. Wow, that's all it takes?
Hey, man, they beat the Militia with the Schoolboy, and they're more than ready for a title match.
And they're moving on up, I guess. Are the Freebirds the next step up from the Militia? Jeez, oh, man.
About right.
We get a replay of the woman promo as seen on Pro. She is woman. Hear her roar. She stands behind no man. You know the gist of it at this point. There's another woman promo coming next week. I thought was tells the story even better. And we'll get there on the next episode of The Grenade. But it's back to center stage promo time. The Midnight Express and Jim Cornette. The Freebirds won't agree to wrestle the Midnight Express at Halloween Havoc, says Jim Cornette, because the Freebirds have already given the Midnights title shots on TV. Cornette explains that there are now 3 Samoans, even though we haven't even seen any Samoan since the Clash. Apparently there are 3 now. Corny knows this anyway. And so Cornette went and grabbed their good friend Dr. Death for a 6-man tag. So it's the Midnights and Dr. Death taking on the Samoans at Halloween Havoc instead. We then learn the Freebirds will face the Dynamic Dudes at Halloween Havoc for the World Tag Team title. So the Dudes technically taking what the Midnights see as their rightful spot on the card. Jim Ross instigates. As Cornette walks away, Jim Ross asks Stan Lane what he thinks of the Dudes. Stan just stares at Jim Ross and the Midnights walk away. So says it all, Steve.
Yeah, definitely does. This is the start of the dissension in the ranks a little bit, and we get more of that next week. So really good stuff here.
And then before the next match gets going, Jim Cornette rejoins Jim Ross on commentary. Jim Ross says there might be some issues between Cornette's teams. Jim Ross feels. Cornette says, well, he walked away before he heard Jim Ross ask Stan Lane the question. He must be deaf because Cornette was like 2 feet away from the camera when the question was asked on the microphone. But Corny says he never heard it, so he doesn't know what Jim's talking about, even though he knows who Jim asked. And Cornette says there's no problems between the Midnights and the Dynamic Dudes. The Midnights don't typically speak. I thought this was hilarious. He says, they didn't answer you, Jim, because they don't typically speak during the promos, and they have to be prepared to speak, which I thought was fucking hilarious, whether he meant that intentionally or not.
Definitely true. Corny couldn't have been too far offset to not hear what Ross asked Stan Lane. So I like the subtleness of the feud. It's not like they're just overbearing. It's subtle things. Yeah, it's like whatever. Stan Lane's just like whatever, not really caring, just calm, cool, and collected, just walking off. He didn't really change his expression the whole time. Even when Cornette said that the Dudes were getting the title match. So it's small and subtle. It's not overbearing and just like forced, you know?
No, and I love the line that Stan Lane delivers next week on TV, which we'll get to on the next Grenade, though. It's pretty good stuff there when we get there, when both teams are interviewed at the same time. But we go back to the ring here this week, and it's Flying Brian over Cruel Connection with the Air Pillman in only 2 minutes and 42 seconds. And I'm not sure if this is the first time or not, but it's the first time I noticed it, Steve. It's Elvira doing the Halloween Havoc promo. And oh my God. Stick her and Missy in a room together all night long.
Definitely looking tremendous.
Oh, amazing. Yes.
That is always a pleasant sight to see.
I would have signed her ass just to look at her, man. She didn't have to talk or manage anybody. Just stand there. That would have been awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Full-time contract.
Absolutely. Just have her sit in the booking room with us, you know?
Absolutely. She can sit anywhere she wants. As long as she's facing me. I want to be able to see her.
Yeah.
I want to see her coming and going. Literally. All right. That's enough of Elvira for this. Yeah. Now we'll move on to the Steiner Brothers promo.
Go, right?
Oh, yes.
That's how the booking would go. Elvira, how you doing? We got Saturday night to book. Elvira. It'd be like you would get nothing done.
Oh, I would get something done. But I'm sure we'll talk more about Elvira throughout the course of the next few weeks as Halloween Havoc gets closer. But for now, we'll move on with this episode, and it's promo time by the Steiner brothers. Scott Steiner with a blackened and bruised eye, swollen eye. Pretty realistic, wouldn't you say, Steve?
Yeah, it looked pretty legit to me.
Do you want to know why?
Is there a story there?
Yes, there is.
Had to be a story there. Yeah, I don't know why, but...
Do you want to know why?
Absolutely.
That was not Turner. That was not Terry Boatwright, Alexander York that did that great makeup job. In fact, that wasn't a makeup job at all. That was a legitimate black and swollen eye. Scott Steiner's left eye swollen shut. Do you know how it got there?
No.
Well, to sell the story and make it look real, Scott Steiner walked right up to brother Rick and said, "Hey, I need you to punch me in the eye for this storyline." Rick, without hesitation, busted the shit out of his brother's face. And there we are. So as they're sitting there cutting a promo on Woman for what Doom did to Scott, it was really his brother standing right next to him who did this to him. I'm serious, guys. Go find this footage. It's got to be on YouTube or something. Get out there and watch this promo from the Steiners from this, September 30th.
Hell, we may put it up. We should put it up if that's the case.
Good call. Yeah, I think I will grab this and throw it up there on Twitter and YouTube. And what did you do to your brother, Rick?
Your brother's ass to make this real.
I'm sure they did this all the time before they ever got paid to do it. So Scotty probably didn't mind at all here. What a tough, you hear tell the old timers like legitimately busting each other up for the to split each other open. And here we go again in 1989. Scotty says from the beatdown from Doom, he has stitches, he has injured ribs, a fractured cheekbone. Wait a minute. Didn't Johnny Ace, wasn't he out for like 2 months because of a fractured cheekbone? And here's Scott Steiner selling a fake fractured cheekbone, and he's back in action the next week. What does that say about Johnny Ace? But Scott says he knew from the start that Robin Green was no good. And this is when Rick kind of feels sorry. He says he should have listened to Scotty from the beginning. He buries his head into Scotty's shoulder. He apologizes. Rick says he would have given Robin anything. Why did they attack Scott? It should have been Rick instead. So Rick clearly understands the story, which is a good thing. Drop the goofiness for this storyline. Otherwise, it's not going to get over. I like that Rick understood everything that was happening. They didn't play up the goofiness here. Scott might be busted up, but he knows there were 3 members of Doom. Count them 3. So maybe they don't really touch on this again, but could always sell that maybe Scotty was seeing triple. I don't really know here, but he invites them to take their masks off and show themselves who they really are. Nobody knows how to hurt humans in so many ways more than the Steiners. How true of a line that is. As Rick says, they should have killed the Steiners because nothing will stop them while they're alive. And my favorite part of this is just Scott Steiner selling the eye job and Rick apologizing. It should have been him. They really got the story over, and you can't forget Scott. And this isn't the first time. This is the first time, but it's not the last time that Scott references 3 members of Doom.
Yeah, I think this is excellent. Rick kind of snaps and then starts yelling, so it's kind of hard to pick up on what he's saying, but you can catch the gist of him, like, it should have been me, it should have been me, that sort of deal. It almost feels like, they got rid of the goofiness, but it's still in the Rick Steiner vein where he only has like maybe 1 or 2 thoughts or emotions.
Yeah.
It's, he's kind of aloof, but he knows something bad happened. And he's gonna get revenge. The only problem is that they should have killed him. Or he ain't feuding with Terry Funk.
Right.
So
wrong feud. Yes. Yeah.
No, this is solid. If you can get past Scott's fake injury voice that he was trying to talk with.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was pretty rough. It's like he got beat up, so he had to talk funny.
Well, his ribs. So I'm wondering if his ribs was hurt if he talked normal. But he has this real like low, raspy voice.
Yeah, it changed his voice. Apparently, they kicked him in the throat too.
It's brutal.
At least he was trying. I'll give him that much. I'll give him points for trying.
Absolutely. Man, if you're gonna take a sucker punch, or not even a sucker punch, you're gonna take a punch from your brother. You get an A+, man. If you're gonna do that for real, you get kudos. So that
was a hell of a punch. I'll say that much.
Oh my God. Whew.
And we close out World Championship Wrestling with the Steiners in the ring, and guess who's back, Steve? It's Missy Hyatt, and she's back to showing it off, the goods. And again, I had to thank Elvira and Missy in the same place at the same time. Couple vignettes. But alas, it's just Missy at ringside.
Again, right?
Oh, God, happy days all day long. And I don't mean the Fonz.
Yeah, I will say, though, it's pretty cool. Like, she immediately went back to showing off the goods.
Yes, as soon as Robin was gone, Missy's right back to being Missy.
Yeah, so she clearly gets it. She clearly gets it, and that's awesome.
And we know this isn't an old match because Scott comes out with the busted up eye for the match. Or Jim Ross says the attack was a crime. Assault and battery, says JR. Don't break the fourth wall, JR. You're supposed to be allowed to get away with these things in wrestling. You can't mention that these things are actually illegal in real life. But JR does here, which is why Terry Funk, by the way, was fined and suspended for trying to murder someone on TV. He was never thrown in jail. So clearly, Doom's going to get away with this scot-free. And in the match, the Steiners are aggressive, but they're not really trying to murder their opponents. Joe Cruz, Bob Cook here. Rick with a belly-to-belly on Cruz. The Steiners pick up the win. 3 minutes, 19 seconds. And Rhubarb, I don't know where he is because the commentators even make fun of it. Rick covers, gets the win, but he won't get up off Cruz until Rhubarb makes the announcement of the winners. And I don't know where the hell Rhubarb went to because it takes him forever. And even Cornette and Jim Ross are like, hey, Rhubarb, get back here. And so finally he announces the Steiners are the winners, and Rick finally gets up off of poor Joe Cruz, who had to be laying there like, what the hell's going on? And that's how we close out the show. And we move on to our final show of the Grenade. It's the main event for October 1st. And this is also the last Atlanta Braves game day. So like I said, maybe we'll see a few more 2-hour episodes moving forward. This episode is actually missing in action. I can't find it. Some of our other go-to guys, they can't seem to find it. Nobody can seem to find this episode October 1st of the main event. However, we do know the matches. We know that they promised Gordon Solie would interview Ric Flair. Gordon Solie would interview Gary Hart on this show. And then from Pro, it was the 10-minute time limit draw between the Freebirds and the Dynamic Dudes. We also learned that Ric Flair goes over Dick Slater here on a count-out. And I have to wonder, I haven't watched ahead, I have to wonder if this is the match from Pro or not. I don't know the finish to the Pro match yet, so I can't say.
I think it is.
Okay, that's what I suspected. So basically, main event for like the third week in a row is just a bunch of replays and recaps and things. We didn't have the footage. We didn't really miss a thing.
I think that my guess is they're just putting stuff in the can because of the Brave season coming to an end. And those, I think, when was main event on? Like 6:05, 7:05, kind of early in the day. And usually baseball is right around that time. So I'm guessing just as a precaution, they did recap shows, so to speak, in order to ensure nobody missed anything.
I could go along with that. I could see that being a possibility. Yeah, we made it through 3 weeks, and it really wasn't even that bad. It really didn't run over as much as I had suspected, especially with the whole news coming in as well, taking up a half hour of the show. But we sure did make it. Another show in the books. We're done with September. We're moving into October, which means we're headed towards Halloween Havoc. And I wish I had a wolf howl right here. That's where I play it. Maybe I'll bring that in for the next episode. But yes, we're on our way to Halloween Havoc. Elvira's along with us for the ride.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ted Turner. Thank you, Ted Turner.
Oh, yeah, throw a few bucks the right way. You know what's going on. I could see Ted being all about that.
Yeah, if it's true how he introduced himself to Missy Hyatt, drunk and, hey, how's it going? Type deal. I read
pretty much the way I would introduce myself to Missy Hyatt, I guess, as well.
Oh man.
So yeah, Steve, we did it though.
It's been a long time since I've seen that show.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not one of my go-tos.
Right.
I usually like 90, 91. 89 is definitely good, and I'm excited to watch it. It's gonna be brand new for me, pretty much.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in quite some time. I mean, I remember it really well because I watched the hell out of it because that was one pay-per-view I didn't get growing up. So once I was able to rent it, I rented the hell out of that thing. And then once I was able to get the entire event, I started watching the hell out of it. Just something different, something new. I remember it pretty well, but looking at it with fresh eyes, coming off of all these storylines and things that we didn't have every nook and cranny for going in when we originally watched these shows, I'll probably have a new eye for it. So it'll be really fun going into this, especially all the little, like I said, all the little added things.
Yeah, I think that's the benefit for the Grenade show anyway, is everything is in detail. Everybody knows the storylines and what's going on, how it's progressing. So when you go back and watch these pay-per-views and clashes, you know why the matches are happening instead of just watching a pay-per-view cold. Like, oh yeah, who cares why they're white wrestling? I just want to watch the show. So yeah, it's nice complimentary to anything that you're watching, really. If you're doing NWA 89 on the network, watch these shows, you'll know what's going on. We're getting there. A couple weeks away, right? 3 weeks away, maybe?
4 weeks.
I've lost track of time.
I think Havoc is the 28th of October, so we are literally 4 weeks away. So we're probably grenade time 3 weeks out from the watch-along. Absolutely.
I'm excited.
So once again, guys, I just want to encourage everybody to go over to patreon.com/WrestleCopia, subscribe to any of our 14 tiers, but I encourage you to really subscribe to the $5 tier, the watch-along series, the all-access tier, if you will. All the shows we've been doing there, been having a blast with the Coliseum videos, Saturday Night Main events, the old WWF and WCW pay-per-views from the mid-90s during the Monday Night War era. Lots of good stuff going up over there. And Steve, man, I appreciate you being here. We made it to October. We made it through September. We made it through the 3-week show here, and it was a lot easier than I was thinking it was going to be.
Well, it helped with there's a lot of re-aired matches on these episodes, so we don't have to talk about it multiple times. So it kind of freed us up to be able to talk about other things that are a little bit more important. So we're probably about 3.5 hours in. It doesn't even feel like that. So hopefully you fans feel the same way. But this is a really fast-paced, exciting show, and I enjoy talking about it. It's been a minute, like you said. So happy to get back in the swing of things.
Right, and I don't always expect everyone to have the time to sit down. Sometimes I have time to listen to an entire podcast that I'm enjoying. Sometimes I have to break it down into 2 or 3 sittings, but that's why the timestamps are there too, so you guys can pick up where you left off. If you don't have a streaming app that does that for you like I do, I use Spotify typically, which picks up right where I left off. Yeah, other than that, man, that's really it for this week. I got a few news and notes at the beginning of next week's episode of The Grenade, but other than that, it's 2 more weeks of NWA goodness, starting with the first 2 weeks of October, heading into Halloween Havoc. Steve, thank you once again for being here for the last 3.5 hours.
It was fun, man. I was happy to get it in. Can't wait till the next one. More Elvira, please. Let's go.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
And once again, I've got to say thanks to all of our loyal listeners. We appreciate you listening, subscribing, and downloading The Grenade. You can find The Grenade, Monday Warfare, the WrestleCopia News Network, and other upcoming podcasts over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and all of your favorite podcast streaming apps from Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Google Pod, Podcast Addict, and so many more. Remember to follow The Grenade on Twitter at Rasslin Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Lastly, I encourage everyone once again to please have a look at our Patreon account over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. I encourage you to please subscribe at least 1 month, give it a try, and join in on the fun. There's no commitment, cancel at any time, but we'd like to think you'll stick around based on the offerings available. It's 14 tiers of goodies over there, and it all starts as low as $1, a $1 tier. We've really been pumping out a series of watch-alongs ranging from the WWF Coliseum video series to random pay-per-views, including 1995 pay-per-views that make a great complementary piece to the Monday Warfare podcast. Also on Patreon, our Power Hour podcast is now up and running, where we review the current product, recent pay-per-views, and discuss a variety of topics from every era. It's unfiltered, uncensored, and nothing is off limits on the Power Hour podcast. We invested quite a bit of money into the podcast network up front, and we want to keep The Grenade, Monday Warfare, and other planned podcasts up and running for 2021, so we'd greatly appreciate your subscription to ensure that we continue to produce quality products each and every week. So please stop over. That address again is patreon.com/WrestleCopia, and please subscribe, show some love, let us know you care, let us know you're there. And with all of that out of the way, it's that time again, time to say goodbye, but we will return next week. And until that time, this is Ray Russell, and for my co-host Stephen Eckstat saying, from pillar to post and coast to coast, you pull the pin, and we'll pick up the pieces right here on the Wrestling Memory Grenade. See you next week. Don't miss it. Be there.
Hello, darling. Halloween Havoc 89 is coming, and it's sure to be full of horrible headlocks. Well, must be from the bike squad. You might even see the sleeper. You want big matches? Well, Elvira's got them. And so does Halloween Havoc 89. Just listen.
There comes a man-bag man wielding prod for cattle. Tempers will flare at his brand of battle. Lex Luger, the Steiners, the Samoans, and Sting. Midnight Express, Precious Paul Ellering. October 28th, a pay-per-view you'll remember. See who fulfills their vows to dismember.
Halloween Havoc 89. If you're frightened by gore, better bring your mummy, because they're settling the score.